Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
I am your co-host, David.
And today we are back with part 3 of our multi-part series about the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Yep. And as always, I'm just going to say it. We're going to do shit, and your dog is going to slowly destroy your office.
You know, sometimes Fork just wants to do a backflip off the couch, and I think that she should have that freedom.
I'm not against it. I'm just saying, for those listening at home, the crashing sound
Was Fork trying to do a backflip off of the couch and failing? She's not a graceful creature.
Yeah.
But she's ambitious, and I don't want to, kind of get that ambitious spirit knocked out of her too early.
Well, I dealt with like an ambitious, so it's kind of like a dachshund all day today.
Yeah, David has been nannying.
Which was essentially being punched in the head repeatedly by a 3-year-old for 10 hours.
That's what I imagine having a kid is like.
And then I tried to take her outside to run around to get some energy out.
Uh-huh.
And she kept trying to jump down an entire staircase into the basement.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that looking fun if you were a little kid, especially if you had like a pillowcase tied around your neck or something.
Yeah, no, she was just like, oh, won't it be so fun if I make it all the way to the bottom of the stairs as quickly as possible? Which meant I am exhausted, dude, and everything is bad.
Yeah.
The world is bad.
Right. Children are not the future.
Children are not, they seem to be doing their best to not be the future by themselves.
I mean, this is kind of true. It's a little disappointing. I've been watching a lot of Gen Z people with like left-wing politics talk about like, why did our generation get so messed up? Like, why did Gen Z end up so conservative?
Uh-huh.
And all the explanations people have been coming up with that they've been like theorizing, a lot of them do make sense to me.
What are the explanations?
Okay, I'll hit you with some of the theories I've heard. The first theory I've heard is that COVID basically gave people all of their socializing on the internet, right? But what it really did is it made people feel like they didn't have to be accountable to anyone for their bad beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that they were on the internet, it's that nobody was around to check them, even in their IRL life.
Yeah.
They were totally isolated. So they could just be their shittiest selves. And usually when you have an instinct to be your shittiest self, you're like socially shamed into being like, oh, that's bad. Don't say that out loud at the very least.
And it's like real hard to, like, it is just genuinely hard to do that in person. Though I will say, I told you, I was telling you about this, the guy who walked up to me at a party and with no hello.
Oh, yeah. It just asked if you were Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet's getting real IRL. That's some internet behavior.
Which
yeah.
I shamed him aggressively because I was like, that's a weird thing to just...
Yeah, you don't do that. That's not how you talk to people. That's not how that works. So that was one theory. Another theory is that millennials were so aggressively cringe, like so aggressively genuine and cringe, that the method of rebellion became to be as anti-cringe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't care about anything.
Okay. I'm not buying any of these theories so far.
Okay, well, do you have a theory about why Gen Z is so conservative? Because it's pretty crazy. It's like, even if you look at like the punk kids who think they're left-wing, they're all libertarian light. They're all anarchist, right-wing,
well,
kind of pseudo-leftists. They think they're leftists, and then they have no left-wing political values.
I mean, that's same as it ever was with the fucking punk kids.
I was a victim of it.
You know my thing about punk, where I'm like trying to discern a legible political ideology from punk is impossible. And my big bon mot that I feel like proves the point is like, what do you think Gigi Allen stood for?
Right. Yes.
Like,
this is true because the most political person I knew during punk was that guy, Dirty Travis, Krusty Travis, who tried to convince me that if you raised a chicken to be vegan its whole life and then you ate the chicken, it would still be vegan because there was a transitive property of veganness.
Yeah, it's
not a consistent ideology.
It is, because it is a space that values like the best thing you can say about that little subculture is that it is very roughly egalitarian. right? Which means that some of the dumbest people you'll ever meet in this world have as much say and right to be there as anyone else.
So true. This is why I'm radically pro-bureaucracy now. We can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
We can't.
Madeline is coming. But speaking of, someone asked me yesterday, what was your top Spotify top? Did you do it?
I didn't do it.
Oh,
Did you do it?
Apparently, though, I guess we're all getting rid of Spotify. This is the thing that's happening.
I don't know. Every corporation is evil. Breaking news.
But Fairport Convention, and everyone was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "It's Ren Fair music. It's Ren Fair. I've been listening to the Silly Sisters.
Is it like a lute? Is a lute involved?
No, it's like British. Sandy Denny, the singer, has one of the most beautiful voices of like recorded music history.
Okay. What era are we talking about for your Ren Fair music?
It's like early 70s.
Okay,
It's like
that
a lot.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I like that 70s Ren Fair thing.
It's fantastically beautiful. But so I spent all day yesterday listening because everyone wanted to know about the Ren Fair music.
Right.
So we listened to Ren Fair music. It was
pretty good.
fabulous. I highly recommend also Sandy Denny's solo album.
Okay, well, I'm interested. Okay, should we fucking get into this shit?
Wait, can we? I feel like the one other. Can I do? I told you about the haircut.
Oh yeah, the haircut's so sad though.
But I feel like it is.
If you're having a rough year, just know everybody's having a rough year. We all are having a rough year.
So I got my haircut, and I've been going to the same woman for 6-ish years. And I showed up, and she had her power turned off. I'm pretty sure for lack of payment. So I got my haircut in the dark.
I think your haircut looks sick as fuck. I think this is one of the best haircuts you've had in a really long time. Now that I'm looking at it, though, it does look a little in the darkish.
Yeah, it's distinctly uneven.
Yeah, it's cool though. It's kind of punk actually. Now that we're talking about punk, but yeah, it's rough out there.
It's rough out there.
It's rough out there.
And also, what are you gonna do? Once I walked in, this is the thing. I was like, am I gonna be like, no, your power's out. Never mind.
I mean, you could, but
that's rough.
that's rough. It's real rough. Yeah.
All right. So
Okay. So it's a real rough year for everybody. It's a real rough year for Ukraine. It's been a few rough years for Ukraine.
So it sounds like maybe they have a deal.
They're in the works of the peace deal, which we'll talk about at the end. This might be part 3 of 4, though.
Oh God.
We've got a lot going on. So for those of you for whom it's been a couple weeks, where we last left off when we were talking about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia is in 2014. We ended last episode talking about the separatist movement that was growing in the Donbass. We'd already talked about how Russia had annexed Crimea. A lot of people in Crimea were very uncomfortable with kind of the civil war that was going on in Ukraine, the very aggressively pro-right-wing elements that the United States had been fostering and backing. And Crimea had wanted to join Russia. Now, the Donbass region was another region that potentially was going to join Russia, but nobody could quite figure out how many people there actually wanted to go. And Crimea was pretty cut and dry. Everybody seemed like they wanted to join Russia. Donbass region, not so sure. And this is major because this is going to be the source of most of the conflict we talk about going forward. Russia's approach had been like, look, we can't tell for certain. It's not like a home run that you all want to join Russia. So what we'll do instead is we'll support and back with military aid a separatist movement if you want to become your own country. And this is where the conflict kind of comes because Ukraine is like, absolutely not. You cannot leave us and become your own country. And this is where we left off last week. And this week, we are starting the episode with maybe the most infamous part of this entire struggle,
which is the Azov Brigade.
Yes. So just before you get started, for everybody listening, if you've ever seen those photos of Ukrainian soldiers running around with swastikas and shit all over the place, this is these guys.
And by the way, I will say, and we're going to get into this a little later, they do have a fabulously well-produced YouTube channel that I have spent way too much time watching, where they do live footage of their little assaults.
Oh God, that's horrible.
Where they also have like color commentary in the background. So they'll just have like some guy be like, yes, we were running through the trenches and we shot a Russian guy. Here's the footage of us shooting a Russian guy.
This is absolutely dystopian time to have a war. Speaking of this, also, have you seen now that rich people are betting on what areas of territory Ukraine is going to lose to Russia next? We're literally betting on people dying in war that nobody profits from except for the United States, I might add. Not too much of a spoiler, but the only people who are enjoying this process is the United States. Rich guys betting on it, and apparently people watching this fucking dystopian YouTube channel of people killing each other.
Well, did you, you saw the reports about, Italian tourists during the Yugoslav stuff in the 90s?
Yes, the kind of, it's almost like adventure tourism, but it's like horrible.
Where it was like they were, the part that stood out to me was that they were paying more specifically to kill children.
Yes, so for anybody who didn't catch up, rich people during the conflict in Yugoslavia were paying to go there and basically assassinate people during the war because these deaths could just be written off as like casualties of war, so you wouldn't be held accountable for them. And depending on what type of person you want to kill, you paid more to your guide to take you there. And they were paying more, yes, to kill children who were caught up in the middle of this conflict. So again, the Ukraine-Russia war, the only people benefiting from this are the United States and adjacent psychopaths.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of psychopaths, the Azov Brigade.
The Azov Brigade.
I'm probably going to subconsciously switch how I say it a bunch of times because I don't know if it's Azov or Azov.
Yeah.
But so in order to talk about them, you actually have to talk about a bunch of right-wing nationalist movements that preceded it. And it's also worth noting that Azov is actually one of about 30 volunteer militias that have, by this point, been folded into the Ukrainian military, but started as essentially private militias funded by billionaires in Ukraine. Right. So these billionaires have, I'm going to say, an ambivalent relationship with the state, right?
Yes.
Under certain circumstances, they benefit extraordinarily from the state and from their connections with the state. But when it suits them, they will also be like, we're pro-Russia, we're pro-EU, who fucking gives a shit? They're wherever the money's taken them.
Right. And the only kind of guiding ideology is that they're super fucking racist. And they Ukrainian ethnic.
So the Azov is the most racist, but a lot of them are just super fucking racist.
Got
it. So they've been extremely willing, as we see, to use private militias to assert, the billionaires have, to assert their own financial interests. And in one case, they took over a radio station because it benefited them. And it's worth mentioning that according to Slavomir Matuzak, forgive me if I had said that wrong, as of 2004, around 100 people controlled about 80% of the country's wealth.
In Ukraine. So they got rich guys.
Yeah, and so this had its roots at the end of the Soviet era when really well-positioned nomenklatura, so essentially people who were working in, for example, engineering fields at the end of the Soviet Union, were in a position to basically buy up all of the country's resources at pennies on the dollar. Which I feel like if there are a number of reasons to deplore the end of the Soviet Union, that certainly is one. So once economic privatization was underway during the 90s, they used that to dominate the economy. And when the 1994 Constitution was passed, Leonid Kuchma became president, and the oligarchic economy took on its most mature form. Two regions with large metallurgy works, the Donetsk region, which the Donbass is a part of the Donetsk region, and the Dnipropetrovsk. Did I say that right, Madeline? It's right there.
Dnipropetrovsk.
There we go.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Dnipropetrovsk.
Those became extremely important to the emerging, let's call it quote unquote liberalized oligarchic economy.
Right.
And we're not going to talk about all of these guys, but we're going to talk about Dmitry or Dmitro Firtash for a bit, who was able to essentially serve as middleman between Gazprom and Ukraine. So he was essentially selling Russian oil into Ukraine. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
He is currently so under Yushchenko, he seems to have gone a little bit too far in his little corruption game. and is now currently fighting extradition to the United States from Austria. We also should talk a little bit about Rinat Akhmetov, who rose to become the richest man in Ukraine, worth about $7.9 billion, through speculating in coke plants, which is the precursor to steel. It's worth being a little careful here, but basically, like, there are these like kind of sketchy reports that suggest that Akhmetov was essentially strong-arming people and maybe like knocking people off through the 90s in order to gain his position.
Okay.
And the other one we have to talk about is Kolomoisky, but about whom more later, because he is the person who is most associated with the initial funding for the Azov Brigade. And Kolomoisky also got his start in steel production and has interests in both Ukraine and Georgia.
This is the Israeli guy, right?
This is the Israeli guy.
Ukrainian guy, yeah.
Yeah, which is, just as an aside, you gotta feel, if you are a Nazi...
Imagine for a moment, thought experiment.
Just
You're a
thought
Nazi.
if you're at a party and you're just asking random people who you see if they're Jewish...
Just like might have happened, David might have encountered a Nazi the other night at the after hours.
I think I just encountered a guy who wanted, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think he wanted to find someone to lecture about Israel-Palestine in a real
weird way.
Real fucking weird way.
Yeah, real weird.
But so Kolomoisky, also majorly corrupt guy, but about whom more later.
Yes.
So the roots of the Azov Brigade can be traced to the Patriots of Ukraine, which you talked about, I believe, in...
I did not talk about Patriots of Ukraine.
Okay. Well, this is the paramilitary youth wing of the Social National Party, which I know you talked about.
I did not talk about the Social National Party.
I swear to God.
I talked about Right Sector and Svoboda. So the thing is, Right Sector was a coalition of all sorts of right-wing nationalist, neo-Nazi people in Ukraine who wanted to build an ethno-state.
Yeah, and so they, like...
There's so many of these groups, though, throughout Ukraine.
This, like, little fucking party had a youth paramilitary wing in the early 2000s. Among the founders was a guy named Andrei Belitsky, a far-right nationalist who I believe is still in their parliament. I think, or
Beletsky, I think, has gotten more power since this time, if I'm incorrect. Yes. Let's take a look. He did get kind of whitewashed and legitimized into this. Let's see if he's still in it now. Because this guy's a real fucking piece of work. And are you going to do the quote?
Oh, well, we already did the quote.
Yeah, it's a good time to do the quote again, though.
The Untermensch thing. I think it's in here later, but if you want to say it now, it will be our refrain. So
Beletsky is no longer in the actual military. He was an elected official from 2016 to 2019, which is after the part that David's talking about right now. Today, he and Azov veterans came together to form something called the 3rd Assault Brigade. Mm-hmm. So this brigade is still out and popular today in the war, and they are the ones who are cataloging everything on YouTube.
So the Patriots of Ukraine was kind of like a precursor to VO Svoboda, and VO Svoboda was their attempt to like gain legitimization through doing like electoral politics, as opposed to being like a freaky paramilitary group.
Yeah, the Nazis.
Right. So 2004, Svoboda's formed, and it's an attempt to pivot towards more parliamentarian models of power as opposed to just like killing people.
Right. And this is during the infamous Orange Revolution, which we talked about in our very first episode.
And the earliest thing that we hear about the Azov Brigade is that they took over Trade Union Hall during the Orange Revolution, and seem to have been like defending it against people who were trying to like take the government back from the revolution.
Yeah, they were trying to do it was a color revolution.
Yeah.
They
were supporting the color revolution.
Yes.
Right. So a year later they reformed the paramilitary group and adopted as their symbol the wolf's angle, which is a creative variation on a swastika.
It's some Nazi shit. They're Nazis.
By 2000...
I just want to say, anybody who tries to tell you that it's Russian propaganda, that Ukraine's got a Nazi problem, they're lying. They themselves are probably deeply propagandized, or they themselves are Nazis and they're doing Nazi apologia. Just like I, as an American, would never say the United States doesn't have a neo-Nazi problem, because the United States fucking has a neo-Nazi problem. So does Ukraine.
Yeah. I feel like, I gotta say, we did the AFD as our Patreon episode. right, what was that, last week?
Yeah.
We all have a Nazi problem.
If you got white people in your country, you got a Nazi.
Well, I'm just gonna say we also did the like the weird like Mexico Gen Z protests or whatever.
Yeah, they got a Nazi problem.
I'm just saying.
You know what? Chiang Kai-shek, arguably a Nazi problem for China.
Yeah, we got.
People got Nazi problems.
And remember, this was what was the? Can you paraphrase the Elon Musk quote about AFD?
No, I don't.
Do you
remember.
do you not
What was the
remember
Elon
this?
Musk quote?
There was like I can't remember her name. I don't think it's Stork or whatever. I think it's the other lady, Alice Fidel or whatever, who was the head of AFD, and Elon Musk wrote like an op-ed in a German newspaper, which got the editor of the newspaper fired, or well, she resigned in disgrace.
Yeah.
But it was like, you're saying the AFD is Nazis, but like she's a lesbian married to a Sri Lankan woman.
That's right.
What kind of Hitler is this?
I remember this now. Yeah.
This is not a direct quoted, but that's
Yeah.
fucking just
Identity politics have broken people's brains so much that they think you can't be a Nazi even if you're trying to build an ethno-state. If maybe, you're gay.
and have a Sri Lankan wife.
And yeah, so that stops you. You can build an ethno-state. You get one ethno-state per gay.
Yeah.
So I think that is what most people with identity politics think. It's the same way they're like, Ukraine can't have a Nazi problem. Zelensky's Jewish.
Is this the logic they're using for San Francisco?
What's going on in San Francisco right now?
No, just all the tech, like the Silicon Valley people.
They
They're like,
still
whoa,
think they're
this is
super
like,
progressive. Yeah, no, this is the liberal ideology, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you can get an ethno-state as long as you have a gay or a woman or a brown person or ideally a brown gay woman doing it.
Have I told you this is one of the most underdeveloped takes or whatever?
Okay.
But
hit us with it.
do you remember when I started reading all of that like queer negativity shit,
Yes.
like the Leo Bersani shit and Lee Edelman? And I was like, whoa, it's like they're not so Madeline, can you describe queer negativity?
Well, the queer negativity thing was like,
It was
it was like a realism, right? It was like a...
well, no, it was like fuck children, fuck futurity.
Yeah. That's
Right,
what I mean by
yeah.
realism. It was just kind of like, yeah, this is where we are. It wasn't quite hedonistic, I would say, but it was definitely like anti-assimilation. Like we're not doing straight people but gay. We're not fucking doing that. And that's what my best friend growing up was really into.
Yeah.
So that is why, for example, when we were in San Francisco and we were in a Mexican restaurant one day eating burritos, two people came in canvassing for gay marriage in California. My best friend attacked them and threw their food on the ground and screamed at them until we all got kicked out of the restaurant. But my best friend was gay and was like, how dare you try to implicate us in this heteronormative bullshit, you fucking sellouts. And I'm like, okay.
This is and like, with the Lee Edelman thing, I was like, wow, that's like, that so ignores so many of like the intersections of identity because people are not merely queer. This is a very white dude type queerness to like, people also have children, even if they're queer, yada, 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 or whatever. The like Raytheon floats at Pride kind of bullshit that seems so fucking prominent now, where like has made me reapproach Lee Edelman's work and be like, I don't know, maybe he was onto something.
Well,
maybe he was onto something.
We call this gay, not queer, because queerness is like a political identity, right? There's something political about being queer. There's nothing inherently political about being gay.
Yeah.
So, you can be a Republican and be gay, but you're probably not a Republican and queer.
Fair enough.
So queerness comes with a political kind of subversion that just being gay doesn't really get you.
All I'm saying, I've been going back to Lee Edelman a lot and just being like, I mean, maybe... Right, because now we got gay lady Hitlers. Yeah, we got gay lady Hitlers.
We got gay lady Hitlers, and it is not good. This is not progress.
Yeah.
This is not the future that Marsha P. Johnson wanted.
Yeah. So we're in 2007. The Patriots of Ukraine and their like paramilitary youth wing end their relationship with Svoboda, kind of in name only, right? Where they're like, we need to put up a firewall between weird hooligans and the people running for parliament because it's like not a good look, right? Belitsky at the same time began his very close association with something called the Ukrainian Conservative Party, known for their virulently anti-Semitic propaganda. Oh, here's the fucking quote.
Here's the quote.
So it's 2010. That Ukraine's national purpose was to lead the white races of the world in a final crusade against the Semite-led Untermenschen, or Untermensch.
Yeah, Untermensch.
My favorite that there's
So, these are explicitly Nazis.
Yeah.
These are explicitly Nazis.
My favorite, and I think I'm going to quote this later, but we can quote things multiple times,
yeah,
and it's so
hit
funny.
people with them, yeah.
It is one of the Azov Brigade guys was being interviewed by some Western journalist or whatever, and he was like, "Listen, I don't hate Russians. I love Russians. I just got to say, Putin is a Jew, though."
Yes, that's right. We talked about this. Putin. Not Jewish, by the way. Not a Jewish man.
So it's around this time that they adopt the Black Sun logo, which is their bigger variation on the Wolfsangel. They get the full fucking
some
thing.
more Nazi shit. Also, surprising to no one, the Nazis are not very bright. This is why they're out here saying shit like, I love Russia, but Putin's a Jew. They're not sending their best. It's not a very intellectually developed, I'm going to say, mindset here.
Yeah, but I don't know. If you have a bunch of guns, many of whom bizarrely also imported from Israel, do you really need to be smart?
You don't. You bang, bang, shoot them all dead.
So the Black Sun logo was first used as a mosaic at the entrance to the, I'm going to mispronounce this, Wewelberg Castle. Madeline, do you want to help me out here?
I mean, you nailed it, babe.
Wewelberg Castle,
like...
which was used by Himmler as the headquarters of the Schutzstaffel, the SS, during the Nazi occupation of Ukraine.
Okay.
So, right, just in case they're like, what are you talking about? It's just a cool symbol.
No.
Oh my God, it's like the Crass logo.
No. We got so much Nazi stuff happening with these people. And again, we're noting this is not everybody in Ukraine. What was it like right sector won 2% of the popular vote?
Yeah,
but also 2%. It's 1 in 50 people running around is yeah, this shit's cool. That's a lot of people.
It's I've mentioned this enough times where it's a lot of people who were sort of on the front lines of the fight between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany or whatever, who I have met, who are usually the grandchildren of people who were alive during that time, have said things like, the Soviets came with guns, the Nazis came with chocolate bars to me.
Oh, God. Okay.
And I'm just saying, it's and these are people who, under whenever you quiz them about every other fucking political thing,
They're fine.
They have the most right on. They live in fucking East Hollywood.
You know what? Call me crazy. I'm not eating the Nazi chocolate. It's going to take a lot more than chocolate bars to make me a Nazi. I don't fucking understand this mentality.
So the Azov Brigade, whatever, has asserted that the use of the Wolfsangel and the Black Sun logo is merely, it stands for the national idea. But it is also a variation of the symbol used by the Wehrmacht.
Okay, so let me get this straight. The people who said the historic mission of their nation was to lead the white races of the world in a final crusade against the Semite-led Untermensch, they were saying that any similarities between their iconography and Nazi paraphernalia was purely coincidental.
I mean, I think what's happening is it's who they're talking to.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we're Nazis, but we're not Nazis.
But if they are talking to Scott Simon for Morning Edition on NPR, they're like, what are you talking about? It's the national ideal. It's a symbol of our liberation from Russia.
Right. And this is what they always come back to. And this is what everybody's like, it's Russian propaganda. It's not fucking Russian propaganda. Okay. Everybody's obsessed with this idea that anything bad you say about Ukraine is Russian propaganda. These were bad dudes doing bad shit who are trying to build a bad future for Ukraine. And they're not the only bad actors in Ukraine at this time. The United States is also a bad actor in Ukraine at this time. Israeli billionaires are also bad actors in Ukraine at this time.
I mean, who would have thought that one?
Who would have thought the Israeli billionaires would show up somewhere with bad politics?
So, during the Russian separatist movement in Kharkiv, which we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Football hooligans associated with the FC Metalist Kharkiv Football Club, known as Sect 82, began occupying the regional administrative buildings to defend against pro-Russian protesters. In February of 2014, it's worth noting that Sect 82 had previously been aligned with the Moscow-based FC Spartak Football Club, and that their main rivalry was with another Ukrainian football club. This feels so... I did dress like a football hooligan today.
You are a little bit. Yeah, you got the kind of Fred Perry vibe.
Yeah. But it, like, so much of the neo-Nazi shit, and we saw this in AFD, so much of the neo-Nazi shit is like weird football hooligans.
Yes, totally.
So they had been aligned with the Moscow-based FC Spartak Club, and their main rivalry was with the Dynamo Kiev Football Club. As an aside, a 2016 Kiev Post article reports that the conflict with Russia had reshaped football hooligans in Ukraine, leading to a truce between the hardcore ultras. So the ultras are within a football club, the people who just like to brawl.
Right.
Right.
And I just want to point out the idea, again, that Ukrainians would all of a sudden hate Russia and be like, we're just defending against Russia. Very, very new. Every kind of polling you see in 2009, the majority of people in Ukraine polled thought that the influence of Russia was a good thing there. Even in 2011, 84% of Ukrainians were viewing Russia favorably.
Yeah, what I've heard is that it's like viewing Russia favorably, especially like the large amount of people who were Russian speakers, right? Were like, hell yeah,
Yeah, of
like,
course we like
it's
Russia.
like-
Yeah. And also worth noting, in 2011, 34% of Ukrainians viewed NATO favorably.
yeah, well,
So when we say, we stole this country and we got the far right to help us, think about how dramatically those perceptions have shifted.
yeah. So here's the quote. The revolution and war pushed everything into the background for us. All the soccer fans signed a sort of peace treaty during the Euromaidan revolution in order to unite to defend our country, says Artem Kudyliev, a member of White Boys Club.
Oof. Okay.
I will not speak to how White Boys Club sounds in Ukrainian and
I
what
think it sounds the same.
what its connotations are.
It's probably about the same.
But this is one of the largest ultras which supported Dynamo Kiev. So during the siege of Mariupol in 2014, pro-Russian separatist protests began to spring up in the eastern Crimean region of Ukraine. Madeline, you talked about this already, right?
Yep.
When the security services retreated from the city in March, the Azov Brigade under Belitsky took over patrols of the city, attacking protesters. During the September 2014 siege, the Minister of Internal Affairs, Arsen Avakov, officially formed the paramilitary units that we now think of as the Azov Brigades from the assorted Patriots of Ukraine paramilitary groups and ultra football hooligans. So this is where like everything like in a kind of Voltron style fashion. We've got our Wolfsangel, we've got our football hooligans, we've got our right-wing paramilitary freaks.
Yeah.
They've all come together.
Great. That's just what you want. That's exactly who you want. Getting consolidated power.
By 2015, journalist Marcin Ogdowski was reporting that the Azov Brigade was actively praising the white race, engaging in ethnic slurs, and displaying swastika. A Guardian article around the same time reports that one member of the volunteer brigade, Dmitry, he said, quote, "I have nothing against Russian nationalists or a great Russia, but Putin's not even a Russian. Putin's a Jew."
Yeah,
So
okay,
there's
there
the
it is.
quote.
Okay.
So he goes on to praise Adolf Hitler's military prowess and to deny the Holocaust.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Again,
Okay. So again, these are the people out
Yeah.
there fighting the good war against Russia on behalf of Ukraine.
well, I will say another volunteer dismissed the charges of neo-Nazi affinities and told The Guardian, of course it's all made up. There are just a lot of people interested in Norse mythology.
Oh my God. Of course, those people who are saying our job is to lead a white race and building an ethno-state against the Semites, they're not Nazis.
They just really love Burzum.
They just love Norse mythology and black metal.
At the same time, the battalion expressed a desire to, quote, bring the fight to Kiev once the siege in Mariupol was over. While the Azov Brigade was able to recapture Mariupol, Russia did successfully annex large parts of the Crimean Donbass region during the siege.
Yes.
Right. So we got to talk about the initial funding. Some of the initial funding for the Azov Brigade came from a Ukrainian billionaire energy magnate named Igor Kolomoisky.
What a name. Igor. You don't hear of many Igors anymore.
So I have been not understanding how to, like, a lot of shit is like, it looks like what I would, my like, Russophone brain thinks of as Russian, but then with like weird differences. So it's actually Ihor.
Yes.
But I think it's
it's probably Igor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kolomoisky, who was at the time governor of the Dnipropetrovsk region, that place, you've already said it once before, sent members of his private army, and so this was another brigade that was associated with the Azov Brigade, to occupy the offices of Ukretransnafta, a state-owned oil company in Kiev, after its chairman, Alexander Lazorko, one of Kolomoisky's allies, was fired. And this is what I was saying, where it's like, right, they, like, the Nazis think they're doing Nazi shit, and sometimes they're doing Nazi shit, but sometimes they are also accidentally just propping up the business interests of some freak billionaire.
From Israel.
He's from Ukraine.
He's an Israeli,
but he has
Ukrainian.
he's got dual citizenship. Let's get it straight.
Let's get citizenship. He's Israeli.
Keep it straight. He is from,
like, so many people in Israel have dual citizenship though.
He is from Ukraine. He is like, he's not, like, he wasn't born in Tel Aviv, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Right. Like,
very few of them were. That's how settler colonization works.
I'm just saying, like, let's keep straight where he's from. So in a confrontation with journalists, Kolomoisky declared that he sent his militia into Ukretransnafta to liberate it from the control of, quote, Russian saboteurs. Critics, however, suggested that Kolomoisky, whose investments include the energy large parts of the energy sector in Ukraine, his actual motivation was to secure favorable conditions within the state-run company, and that his actions were a challenge to fellow billionaires and then President Poroshenko, and was actually a response to a new law which lowered the number of shareholders necessary to hold a vote, because this is a state-run company in which Kolomoisky owned a controlling share.
So he's like, what if we got it to where just like one person, me, Kolomoisky, got to vote on everything?
So his private group at the time owned 43% of shares in Ukretransnational. While he was unable to reinstall Lazorko, he did reach a private agreement with the Poroshenko government to appoint a new chairman who would not conduct an investigation of the company's finances, which would have shown that Kolomoisky was using his influence to essentially pad his own pockets.
Yes.
Right.
Shocking.
And I feel like it's worth going a little into the background of this guy, because it serves as like a synecdoche for like the whole fucking
and
system.
also we're gonna see this guy's instrumental in Zelensky's political rise as well. So it's important to know about him, I think. Yeah.
So he's very much a product of the shock doctrinaires. He was born in 1963 in Dnipro, again a region of the eastern Ukraine. In the 1990s, he was able to essentially reassemble under his own control some of the Soviet Union's most productive ferroalloy and manganese mines, both in Georgia along the Black Sea, along with the steel mills used to process the minerals in Ukraine. So essentially, he created his fortune by controlling both the raw minerals and how they were processed between Georgia and Ukraine.
Just like France did in Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the Aidar Brigade was the one who stormed Ukretransnational, or NAFTA or whatever.
Right.
And in addition to the Aidar and Azov battalions, he also privately seems to have funded the Dnipro battalion. Citing his association, Russia issued an arrest warrant for Kolomoisky, which meant that his economic and political future tied to friendly cooperation between him and Russian oligarchs. Because again, he's playing all sides.
Yes.
He's not like that's gone.
He's not an ideologue.
Yeah. That was put into jeopardy when the new Ukrainian government installed after Maidan sought help from the IMF. The new loan came with scrutiny of his private bank group. Right. So that's the part, like, some analysts that I've read have essentially said that, like, what's at stake for, like, the ruling class in Ukraine, aside from anything else, is that the sort of, like, new neoliberal associate agreements with the EU would have essentially rationalized exploitation of Ukraine, right, and taken it out of the control of corrupt Ukrainian oligarchs. Does that make sense?
It does.
Which is, so it's like not better, just a different form of, like, Ukraine being exploited.
Right.
And
this, again, is just a story about multiple bad actors trying their best to exploit Ukraine.
Yeah. IMF investigators found that corruption and theft had left the bank in a $5 billion hole, mostly because, like, Kolomoisky was stealing. The IMF demanded in response the private bank be nationalized. As Ryan Christopher notes, quote, "At first glance, nationalization might seem out of character for the ostensibly, quote-unquote, free market mission of the IMF. However, if one looks beyond the catchphrases and free market dogma, the IMF nationalization of private bank is congruent with their historical motives. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Western capitalist forces largely stood by while oligarchs took warlord-like control of public holdings. However, as these same interests sought to expand more directly into new markets, they moved to reshape the system. Ukraine, one of the westernmost among the post-Soviet countries and second only to Russia in GDP, would move from the wild east to the west, trading the primitive mafia management of the oligarchs for the sophisticated bureaucratic rule of corporate finance. By leveraging IMF loan conditions, outside interests sought to exert control over the government itself, facilitating the development of corporate financial control that marginalized the oligarchs."
This makes sense.
So private bank was nationalized, and Kolomoisky fell back upon his Georgia holdings through his American-based, large private finance group.
Okay. Also worth noting, the United States super involved in Georgia.
Yeah. So in January of 2014, protesters occupied government buildings in Kiev and toppled the government of Yanukovych. Poroshenko, who succeeded Yanukovych, quickly incorporated the Azov Brigade into the Ukrainian military proper. At the same time, fighting in the Donbass had become a training ground for far-right volunteers from around the world. Poroshenko, meanwhile, took measures to ban the speaking of Russian and to commemorate the legacy of Ukrainian Nazis like Bandera.
Yes.
Right. Granting Ukrainian citizenship to Belarusian neo-Nazis at the same time. A Time magazine investigation report said, quote, "Outside Ukraine, Azov occupies a central role in a network of extremist groups stretching from California across Europe to New Zealand, according to law enforcement officials on 3 continents. It acts as a magnet for young men eager for combat experience." Ali Soufan, a security consultant and former FBI agent who studied Azov, estimates that more than 17,000 foreign fighters came to Ukraine over the past 6 years from 50 countries. The new international recruits mostly found their way to Azov through Facebook, with one security expert telling Time Facebook is the main channel.
Okay, I will say that I've encountered a lot of Ukrainian nationalists on Twitter, and they're fucking freakazoids, just like any nationalist is. Nationalists from anywhere are fucking freaks, okay? And more than that, though, I have encountered guys from Canada and the United States who are Ukrainian nationalist fanboys who did indeed volunteer to go fight with these people.
Yeah.
And they'll wear it proudly. Their bios on Twitter will be all about it. Like, their identity is that they went to go fight alongside these right-wing paramilitary groups in Ukraine.
And this, when we were doing the chit chat section, you were like, it was like, why is Gen Z so fucking right-wing?
Yep.
Or whatever. And I will say that, how do I put this? It is very clear that liberal bourgeois democracy is not doing anyone any fucking favors.
Yes.
Right? And I will say, in the immediate post-war like West, right, and specific like in America, huge rates of profit led to essentially a labor capital truce for a while, because there was like, we can give relatively high wages. Those wages have been stagnant since something like 1968, right? Which means that for Gen Z motherfuckers now, they are coming into a world in which the sort of ideology of liberalism, which also includes all of that like nice stuff, like, you know, gay rights and women's rights and shit like that, starts to look really bankrupt.
Yes.
And the, you know, it is, what's the Yeats quote? The best lack all resolve, the worst are full of passionate intensity.
Yes.
Right. And so it's like, where the energy is Azov Brigade, and you can go fight with them.
Right. And that's why I do think it's important to offer people an alternative. Like, I was talking about this one day on the internet where I was like liberals, Democrats in the United States really underestimate how many people are conservatives, not even because they agree with a conservative ideology, but because they just fucking hate Democrats and liberals so much because of the hypocrisy and because of how bankrupt it is.
Yeah.
And they see it's just bullshit. And they're so mad with being sold this lie. They're like, this isn't working. This isn't doing anything for anybody. You pat yourselves on the back like you're so into gay rights. Meanwhile, none of us can fucking afford rent, gay or straight. Who fucking cares? And so many people turn to conservatism because they see that liberalism is morally bankrupt and they think those are their only options.
And I think I quoted this on the AFD episode, where it's the Perry Anderson thing about reaction sometimes accomplishes what revolution fails to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that reaction gets you the material things that revolution promised. It means that it gives you like the libidinal charge that you thought you were going to get from revolution. It gives you a fantasy version of the compensation that you're not getting from the current system.
Yes.
So that's a weird aside, but so Jacobin had this to say about Maidan. In truth, the Maidan revolution remains a messy event that isn't easy to categorize, but is far from what Western audiences have been led to believe. It's a story of liberal pro-Western protesters driven by legitimate grievances. And again, the government of Ukraine and like the sort of political economy of Ukraine was massively fucking corrupt.
Yes.
Right. And so they are driven by legitimate grievance, but largely drawn from only one half of a polarized country entering into a temporary marriage of convenience with the far right to carry out an insurrection against a corrupt authoritarian president. The tragedy is that it served largely to empower literal neo-Nazis while enacting only the goals of the Western powers that opportunistically lent their support, among which was the geopolitical equivalent of a predatory payday loan. I think that's...
Yep, I think that totally sums it up.
So we got to talk about what Azov did.
Oh, God.
Okay.
So much. Okay, yeah.
So this is all going to be taken from United Nations High Commissioner reports. So between February and May of 2016, they reported that the Azov Battalion had committed human rights abuses, including acts of sexual violence and torture, or linking documented cases to the military presence in densely populated civilian areas, such as towns near the contact line, with general impunity. A man with a mental disability was subject to cruel treatment, rape, and other forms of sexual violence by 8 to 10 members of Azov and Donbas battalions in August to September of 2014. In 2015, the report continues members of the adjacent Aidar battalion attacked, beat, and chased a woman while calling her sexual slurs. The police did not take any measures, and according to the victim, they were afraid to protect her for fear of antagonizing the Aidar battalion.
Wow.
In January of 2015, 3 members of the Azov battalion kidnapped a supporter of the Donetsk People's Republic, which was the separatist movement, confining him to the basement of a Mariupol school and tortured and interrogated him for over a week. He complained about being handcuffed to a metal rod and left hanging on it. He was reportedly tortured with electricity, gas mask, and subjected to waterboarding, and was also beaten in his genitals. The UN report also accused Azov of, quote, looting civilian residences. During the Maidan March of 2016, members of the Azov battalion attacked protesters carrying communist and pro-federalist anti-Maidan St. George flags. Additionally, Azov regiment members carried out attacks on the offices of 3 TV channels, Inter TV 17, and TRK Ukraina. In the last instance, the attackers left leaflets reading, "There will be blood." Apparently, this was all triggered by comments made by a Russian journalist critical of those who had died during Euromaidan. Newsweek reports on human rights abuses during the Donbass conflict. They confirmed that Aidar had captured 2 Donetsk rebels and beheaded them in what Newsweek described as, quote, ISIS-style human rights abuses. One of the mothers told the magazine she had received her son's head in a wooden box.
Wow.
An Amnesty International report quoted by Newsweek suggested that the Ukrainian military exercised only loose control over the volunteer militias. Kolomoisky, meanwhile, had placed a bounty for the capture of any of the Donetsk rebels.
Okay, and I just want to point out the significance of the UN and Amnesty International reporting this is major because their bias is usually very pro-Western. These are the same people that when you're talking about what's happening in Iraq, in North Korea, for example, they're citing 38 North, Radio Free Asia, NK News, Daily NK. These are not particularly progressive, left-leaning institutions. These are institutions that favor the United States, that favor the West. So for them to be reporting like, hey, these neo-Nazi guys are a problem, that goes against their typical interests, which means that this actually has to be so extreme, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
The same thing with them reporting on Palestine. When they're reporting on Palestine, it's like it's reached a point where you can't deny it because everybody knows you would look out of your mind. So
and that's
what's going on.
I've always said that I do have a tendency to favor sources like this, but because they have, I guess you'd call it mainstream legitimacy. Right.
They do. If you talk to an average liberal, for example, they trust these sources.
Yeah.
Even though they are very biased sources that cite a lot of propaganda in favor of the West. But they do have utility when you're like, hey, look, liberal, even these sources have to admit this was happening. This is not some pro-Russia conspiracy. These are sources that historically do not favor Russia.
Yeah.
And they are reporting.
And I mean, here's why. So on October 16th, 2016, thousands of members of the Ukrainian national militias, including the Azov battalion, marched through Kiev holding torches to coincide with the commemoration of the founding of the nationalist and erstwhile Nazi collaborator or Ukrainian insurgent army during World War II. Right? There is a point where it's like, when you got the guys with torches, you can't
deny it. They're there marching through the streets basically yelling we're Nazis. You would look out of your mind. You would lose all legitimacy to try to pretend this wasn't real or happening.
And there were gestures in the United States Congress to sort of do something about this. Let's call it gestures. In 2018, after its ties to far-right neo-Nazis became publicly known, U.S. Congress inserted a provision into its spending bill that banned supplying weapons to the Azov battalion. It's worth noting that Congress had inserted those provisions into 3 previous years' spending bills, but that the provision had been removed each time before the bill's ultimate passage. Ro Khanna, who was a Democrat from California, who'd been critical of providing military aid to Ukraine more generally, told The Hill, quote, white supremacy and neo-Nazism are unacceptable and have no place in our world. At the same time, U.S. aid to Ukraine expanded to $620 million.
Wild.
Also, at the same time, according to Electronic Intifada, Israel started doing arms shipments. They confirmed that Israeli Tavor rifles were ending up in Azov and Aidar battalion hands. In response, Israeli lawyer Itay Mack wrote a letter demanding an end to weapons shipments to Ukraine on the rationale that they might end up in neo-Nazi hands. However, because Poroshenko had officially incorporated Azov and Aidar into the Ukrainian military, there was no way to confirm that Israeli arms shipments wouldn't go to the battalions, nor that Azov and Aidar wouldn't receive Israeli training.
Right. Okay, yes.
So, meanwhile, Azov associate and neo-Nazi Andrei Poroba was welcomed at a meeting of the American Foreign Policy Society in the U.S. Senate. Paul Ryan, then Speaker in the Senate, described it as an excellent meeting with a proactive leader.
Okay, this neo-Nazi.
Belitsky, meanwhile, was during his tenure in Ukrainian parliament, which, as we said earlier, lasted from 2016 to 2020. After he stepped down from office, he formed the 3rd Assault Battalion with veterans of Azov, fully incorporating Azov into sort of like U.S. military training. 2 more things. As a part of Azov's recruitment and PR strategy, they maintain, as I said, an active and wildly popular. Like, if you look at the views, it's like hundreds of thousands, millions of views of their YouTube channel with high production quality videos of Azov battalion soldiers reviewing weapons and armor, often shipments from the United States or Britain or Germany or Israel, as well as testimonials and live footage of the war shot to look like an action movie or realistically often like a first-person shooter video game.
I was picturing a first-person shooter video game for sure.
So lastly, the U.S., as of this year, formally lifted its ban on supplying weapons to Azov, with a spokesperson saying that they could find no evidence of human rights abuses. Again, see UN human rights reports mentioned earlier.
Yes. Even the UN is like, oh, you got some human rights abuses. Uh-oh.
I'll say one more thing before I hand it over to you.
Yes.
Kolomoisky is, last I heard, is under house arrest. He seems to have killed a journalist. I mean, not personally.
This is the
He is accused of...
Israeli billionaire.
You got it? Okay. Ukrainian.
They all have dual citizenship.
Yes, no, I
They
understand.
are settler colonizers.
I understand. The last I heard, he was in house arrest at his estate in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, okay.
And he is accused. The trial is underway as we speak.
Okay. He may or may not have iced a journalist.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. We are actually still in the year 2014.
Okay.
I have to point this out because 2014, the Azov Brigade officially was founded in this year.
Yeah, but they had their roots
going
in all
back.
this other shit.
Yes, totally. So while all that's going on and they're kind of reconsolidating and founding and, et cetera, we're going to hop on over to the less disputed areas of Ukraine because that's mostly happening in the Donbass. They're fighting, whatever.
We're in the West.
We're in the western part of Ukraine. And here, it's May 25th and presidential elections are going to happen. And I need you guys to remember, if you remember how much of the last episode was about 2014, we are less than halfway through this year, and so much has happened in 2014. 2014 is the longest year that has ever existed in Ukraine. So, your favorite guy, David, Ukrainian billionaire Petro Poroshenko, a.k.a. the chocolate king of Ukraine, runs for president.
Yep.
And he wins in a landslide. Now, Poroshenko, if you're wondering about his political allegiance, he had been a Yushchenko guy. Remember, after the Orange Revolution, which was a color revolution, Yushchenko ended up in the president's office. And in 2005, he actually had appointed Poroshenko to be national security secretary. So this guy had been part of Yushchenko's cabinet. And Yushchenko, you remember, he was the America guy. He was the pro-U.S., pro-Western guy. His wife, remember, was American. I mean, she worked in the State Department, for God's sake.
That's a honeypot if ever I've heard it.
Yes. I mean, Katerina Yushchenko. So when we say Poroshenko was a Yushchenko guy, what that really means is Poroshenko was a USA guy.
Yeah.
He's a USA guy. So in this election, it's worth noting, how did he win so easily? Well, the Donbass region wasn't really participating in that election. They got their whole thing going on. They're like, we don't even want to be a part of Ukraine. We want to have a separatist movement. And also, there's a war.
They were otherwise occupied with getting their sons' heads mailed to them.
Exactly. By right-wing neo-Nazis running through their streets. So mostly just Western Ukraine votes on this. And in this election, Tymoshenko, Heidi Braid, she finishes a distant second, which is 13% of the vote. Meanwhile, candidates from Svoboda and Right Sector, the two ultra-nationalist far-right, totally fucked up parties, they received barely 1%. So sometimes people will be like, well, how bad could this neo-Nazi problem have been in Ukraine if they're not very popular? They're getting less than 2% of the vote consistently. And that is true. But it doesn't matter how popular they are with the people. They are very influential because they have ties with these billionaires. They have ties with the United States-backed politicians there. They're getting kind of given special treatment because, of their temporary political allegiance with the Western powers. So I actually think it's worth understanding that these guys were not super popular in Ukraine.
Yeah, no, I think I can't remember if it's Jack, like the thing where it's like, okay, the IMF shit is essentially like a change in the guard of who controls Ukraine, but not for like the Ukrainian people.
No.
However you fucking...
Yeah, none of this is benefiting Ukrainian people, right? And sometimes when you talk about the reality of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, if you say anything bad about Ukraine, people will assume that that means that you think all Ukrainians are Nazis and that Ukraine deserve to be invaded or whatever. And I have to stress that not only is this not the case, the fact that so few Ukrainians support this super right-wing thing that has so much political power in their country is just one more kind of point of evidence that the United States and Western powers are stealing this country right out from under their nose, right out from under the Ukrainian people's nose. So this election actually does feel like a coup to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Economist and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Economic Policy, Paul Craig Roberts, he went so far as to say, quote, Washington overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014 and installed a puppet. Meanwhile, while all this is going on in the West and everyone's like, did the United States just kind of steal our elections? Over in the East, fighting gets more intense, just like you were talking about, David, with Azov over there as part of the Ukrainian military and the Russian-backed separatists fighting, right? It gets just more hardcore, more terrifying. Poroshenko gets sworn in as president on June 7th, and he's like, immediately, we have to control these separatists over in the East. And nobody at this time can really figure out exactly how involved Russia is. They know Russia's involved, but they don't know to what extent. There's Ukrainians in eastern regions of Ukraine running around with Russian guns. We know that. We see some Russian tanks popped up in towns near the border. And remember, Russia had been like, we're not going to take you, but we're going to support your separatist movement. But it seems kind of like they're saying, Donbas region, if you win your own independence and then choose to join us later, we'll let you. And we will let you, in the meantime, use our military gear, and we'll send some guys out there. But it doesn't really seem like Russia is super passionate about annexing the Donbas region at this point. Or maybe even ever, truth be told. So the anti-Western government forces in eastern Ukraine are fighting really, really valiantly. They managed to shoot down a Western Ukrainian plane carrying 49 people. And Poroshenko is like, this is really getting really intense. This is full Civil War vibes again. Remember, there'd already kind of been a civil war in 2004. 2014 is an even bigger one. And Poroshenko's like, we have to call a truce. And everyone kind of tacitly agrees to a temporary ceasefire. And Putin is like, okay, I'm going to help this all get smoothed over. I had previously given my people an order authorizing them to just basically go onto Ukrainian soil. Don't pay too much attention to the borders, because technically we're backing a separatist movement here. So the Donbas we're not recognizing as Ukraine. So if they want us there, we'll go there. So once the ceasefire kind of agreement is called between Ukraine and the separatists, Putin is like, I'll play ball, and I'm going to make sure that no Russian troops are on Ukrainian soil, including the Donbas, right? So on June 27th, Poroshenko, meanwhile, signs an agreement with the EU that solidifies this new Western-backed Ukrainian government. We're looking at their relationship with Europe. And the whole ceasefire thing kind of falls apart after this. And Ukrainian Western-supported forces go back into battle while the Eastern Ukrainians intensify their air defense campaign. And they end up shooting down more Western Ukrainian airplanes. So on July 17th, Malaysia Airlines 777, carrying 298 people, crashes in eastern Ukraine in the Donetsk region. And both Ukrainian and the separatist groups kind of in this disputed territory of the Donbas at this time, and also Russia, all three, deny any responsibility for this whatsoever. U.S. intelligence analysts are like, this was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, and nobody is taking credit for it. So international pressure starts mounting. They're like, you can't just go around shooting down airplanes out of the sky because you guys are having a civil war. So Svoboda and UDAR withdraw their support from the ruling coalition going on politically in Ukraine. And the prime minister, who's Yatsenyuk, gets really frustrated at the pace of legislative action, and he's like, that's it, I'm resigning. Parliament, though, rejects Yatsenyuk's resignation, and they're like, look, we're going to agree to your proposed budget amendments because we need some stability here because this is just getting out of control. But Poroshenko is like, we can't count on Yatsenyuk, so we're going to call for parliamentary elections to be held in early October. Now, Eastern Ukraine starts actually losing a little ground, and the Western Ukrainian government is advancing. So people kind of think like, hey, wait, maybe like Ukraine can pull this off and they can hold on to this Donbas territory that wants to retreat. And remember, Russia, they had been more involved before, and now they're less involved, which is probably why eastern Ukraine is losing ground. But they still are providing support to the eastern Ukrainian kind of separatist movement. But they're still kind of dealing with this confusion about what are we considering the Ukrainian border and not, right?
Mhm.
And this is going to be an ongoing kind of area of dispute. So by August, 1,000 Russian troops are currently existing in the eastern Ukrainian kind of area, and they are assisting eastern Ukrainians, and they end up taking the port of Mariupol, which you mentioned, David. September 5th, the governments of Ukraine and Russia meet with the separatist leaders. Like, they all kind of sit down together in Belarus, and they agree to a new ceasefire, but this ceasefire, again, does not actually stop the violence. Poroshenko, meanwhile, is proposing a series of political and economic reforms that are supposed to prepare Ukraine for EU membership in 2020. And as you can guess, that's just upsetting the people in the East even more. So the following month, October, Poroshenko's mandate receives approval from voters, and pro-Western parties end up totally triumphing in these snap parliamentary elections. So now, if there was any debate about if the government has been captured by Western interests or not, like, it's done now. The Ukrainian government is totally captured by Western interests.
And I want to emphasize, like, there's no debate that the people are voting for these things.
At
Right.
this point, we're pretty sure people are voting for these things, but the important thing to remember is, like, half of Ukraine's not participating in these elections.
No, I just wanted to be clear, like,
Yeah.
like,
These are not considered disputed elections.
yeah.
But remember, we can actually see real time the opinions about the West and the United States and Russia alter in conjunction with how much spending we're doing via the National Endowment for Democracy in the Ukrainian region.
No, yeah. I mean, I assumed that was the case,
Yes.
and like the propagandizing effort.
Exactly. And all those pesky people who didn't like the United States, well, they've just now declared themselves a new country or part of a different country. So they're not voting in us. So we can deal with it on our own. And this is actually something that's really important to remember when we talk about the United States. The United States, to us, this is a really advantageous outcome. We don't care if Ukraine loses territory. All that we care about is that the part of Ukraine that's left supports us.
Mhm.
And that's why we do a divide and conquer strategy. If we can't take it all, we'll take what we can get. And what we can get is Western Ukraine. So we don't care about Eastern Ukraine going away. So November comes around, and the Eastern separatists hold their own elections. They're like, we're not Ukraine anymore, so we're going to do our own thing. They hold their own elections in Donetsk and Luhansk. And Ukrainian and Western authorities are like, you can't hold your own elections. We're not recognizing you as your own country, because obviously those elections favored separatist candidates. So Ukraine and Western authorities are like, no, your elections are invalid. Russia was like, we'll recognize the elections. They're not you guys anymore. They chose to leave and become their own country. But then later, due to international pressure, they walk it back a little and they say, we'll respect the elections, but we're not going to get super involved, basically. They don't want to cause more chaos. Poroshenko responds by vowing to rescind an agreement that would have granted additional autonomy to Donetsk and Luhansk. So Poroshenko had tried to win them over and be like, fine, you can stay Ukraine, but just be like more autonomous. But he gets so pissed off with the people that they elect in and the fact that they have their own elections that he's like, never mind, you're with us or against us, war on.
Cool.
So this is pretty wild. And again, when you tell these stories, people online are like, why are you making Russia look so good? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like David and I have talked about this before. Like, I'm not one of those leftist Marxists who really loves modern day Russia. That doesn't make sense to me. But if you think Russia sounds kind of like sane and rational in this whole story, you're not alone. I think they're responding actually pretty sane and rational given the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I quoted a couple times, like a few weeks ago, that like Andrew Silwa book, which is I believe called Frontline Ukraine, and was published during the sort of Donbass thing or whatever. And Silwa's take was that there are these like competing conceptions of Europe or whatever, one of which is, I believe, Greater Europe, the other of which is called like Larger Europe or whatever.
Yeah, you talked about this in the last episode, but keep going with the thought. Yeah,
But one of which is like a kind of, creeping expansion of the EU where that's nonetheless sort of necessarily and almost like ontologically excludes Russia, right? Like where Russia is just like excluded by virtue of
its Russianness,
its language,
Yeah.
like or whatever. Like, Russia cannot be a part of Ukraine. But there is like an earlier sort of like De Gaulle, and like De Gaulle, Mr. Liberal, and kind of one of the dumbest guys. I still want to do like a fun Patreon episode on the 30 odd times that people tried to assassinate him.
Oh, that would be a great episode.
But right, which was like a greater, like, De Gaulle, for all of his myriad faults, foresaw a day in which the Soviet Union would come to an end and the Cold War would be over, right? And was like, wanted like a greater Europe that would potentially include Russia as a member of the European community.
And it seems like Russia has been open to this.
And Putin has been and the man is massively corrupt. Let's just like
he's a billionaire. He's a rich guy. He's very corrupt. His anti-imperialist takes, though, are usually pretty good, and his foreign policy is not nearly as aggressive as the West likes to paint it out to be.
And I think, right, like, I don't even think we have to call it anti-imperialist full stop, right? But it's like, okay, take for granted that Putin wants like a De Gaulle version of Europe, right?
He wants to be included at the table.
That, like, he has been Charlie Brown with the fucking football for like since 2000, right? Where he's just been like, every time he like, thinks he's going to get a seat at the table, thinks that some sort of like agreement is going to get hammered out, like Hillary Clinton or someone shows up and is like, fuck you, get out of here, right? And so his critiques come from a place not of like, he's not like a Maoist third worldist.
No,
right?
He's not an ideologue. Putin is not an ideologue, but he is rational, and he actually has been trying to play ball with the international community in a way that's far more significant than how the West likes to pretend.
But I guess what I'm saying is, if you understand him to be pursuing a seat at the table, then his critiques of the way in which the State Department largely has prevented that from happening through its kind of backdoor influence, like its NATO influence in the EU, it starts to make like
it makes
a lot of sense.
It also makes sense why he did not annex the Donbas region immediately, even though he could have. And that's the thing. If you have this idea in your head of Russia as a cartoonish evil villain that's just hell-bent on acquiring land, they could have had justification to immediately take the Donbas region. But they were like, there's not enough public support for it, so we cannot. And you don't have to believe they're kind or benevolent or honorable people. Just rationally, it doesn't make sense for them to do that and piss everybody in the world off. And they are people who have still been trying to play on the global stage fairly. And the United States has been who largely prevents them from doing
And again,
this.
like, NATO is like the large tool, but like the ways in which the EU has been formed sort of like on the model of NATO, or like the way that the EU sort of like military strategy has been formed on the model of NATO or in conjunction with NATO, has played a large part in preventing like a realistic sort of like alignment of Russia with the West.
Yes. And there's a really good speech that I always recommend people watch. That's Jeffrey Sachs, who, was that analyst who had done work under Republican and Democrat presidents here in the United States, but also had done a lot of stuff in the UN. And he was actually one of the people tasked with trying to help the economy of Ukraine restabilize in 2014. He gives a speech at one point to EU Parliament. He's invited there, and he's like, you guys are so afraid of Russia that it is stopping you from just negotiating with them. And I will tell you, like, Putin, Russia, they are always trying to negotiate. They are always trying to have conversations first. They are not interested in firing first. And the only reason why you guys, as the EU, think this is because the United States is telling you this. And do not trust the United States. They are not your fucking friend.
And it makes sense for, like, Russia to want into the European community from, like, just, like, and again, you don't have to be like, wow, Putin, what like a cool guy.
Yeah, you don't have to have any personal feelings about Putin. This is just rational and true.
It's
this
just
is
like
beneficial for them, so they do not want to alienate all of Europe.
Right, like, the largest sort of like common market right fucking next to them.
Right, and that's something Jeffrey Sachs says. He's like, don't be stupid, don't piss off your neighbor.
Yeah.
And Putin is trying really hard to be friendly with neighbors who are trying to burn his house down.
I mean, maybe we might want to past tense that a little.
Okay, he was. At this stage, in 2014. So, to get an idea of just how involved the United States really is in what's going on in Ukraine, in December of 2014, something happens with Natalie Drusko. And if you don't know who Natalie Drusko is, she had previously also been at the State Department, just like Yushchenko's wife, right? She had been a State Department person. She'd been pretty high up. And her former job was actually in the State Department to oversee issues related to former Soviet countries. So under Clinton, she was chief of economics under the embassy in Ukraine. And Douglas Valentine, who's kind of made his career rewriting books a million different ways about the same set of interviews he got with the CIA once, somehow magically, but that are legitimate and real, Valentine says that actually Drusko was pretty involved in helping to pave the way for the coup that would occur 20 years after she was working under Clinton. And she ended up acquiring Ukrainian citizenship the same day in December of 2014 that she was appointed to the position of Ukrainian Minister of Finance.
This is who was Dr. Oz when Dr. Oz tried to run for Senate in Pennsylvania.
Did that really happen?
Do you not remember this?
No.
That, like, he lost to that, like, weird giant man who's, like, aggressively pro-Israel and is, like, a Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
Who's, like, famous for waving...
Futterman? Is it Futterman?
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think that sounds right.
Uh-huh.
Who's famous for having a mental breakdown,
Yeah.
which we're pro-mental health here.
I'm pro-mental breakdown here, actually.
And
I'm pro-mental unhealth here.
Climbing on the roof of his house and waving an Israeli flag at protesters.
Oh, God. I don't know if that's Fetterman. That's wild.
No, that is Fetterman.
It is Fetterman.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Well,
The Jim Shorts guy.
the Jim Shorts guy. So this is how we close out 2014, the longest year known to man.
Mhm.
So much is happening. And what we get into now is this period from 2015 to 2018 that I called the BZ period. This is the before Zelensky period.
Sick.
So we got this new Western-backed government in here, right?
And at the same time, we've got a comedian,
Which comedian?
Zelensky.
Oh, Zelensky's a
He's-
comedian. Yeah, he is. He's an actor. So in its 2015 annual report, Ned says that its grants played a role in the early stages of the 2013-2014 coup, basically. Revolution. Some people don't like it when you call it a coup. It's a coup. But some people don't like that. So they're like, it's a protest. It's a revolution. So National Endowment for Democracy is like, oh, you like that? Yeah, we did that. They fully fucking admit
Well, I mean,
shit.
like, can you imagine if you work at National Endowment for Democracy and you're doing all the shit all over the place and you never get to take credit?
It feels good to take credit.
Also, a lot of the time, everyone, like what happened in Venezuela or whatever, people are like, that's fucking stupid. Who is this guy? Get him the fuck out of here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get a win.
And you keep it.
You get a win and you keep it. And you can't even take credit for it. This is like an F student finally getting a B.
You want the credit. And National Endowment for Democracy, they take the credit. So between 2011 and 2014, they had allocated around $14 million specifically to support Ukrainian-oriented NGOs. And they actually were like, the one of these that had a bunch of active involvement in I'm going to call it a coup, in the 2014 coup, was one called the Institute of Mass Information.
Let's just call it regime change.
Regime change. We'll call it regime change.
We are in a new regime.
We're in a new regime.
We don't know why the regime changed.
But the regime
We
changed.
are ambivalent about the causes.
Yes. So the outcome of the Institute of Mass Information being active and involved in the regime change was specifically the ousting of elected President Viktor Yanukovych and the rise of Petro Poroshenko. And the National Endowment for Democracy just goes mask off and is like, yeah, we did that. So in January of 2015, the UN, meanwhile, had estimated that more than 5,000 people had already been killed since the beginning of the hostilities. So again, the United States is just like, we want control of Ukraine. We don't care whose blood has to be shed to make this happen, but we know it's going to be Ukrainian blood and it's not going to be ours because we're fucking psychopaths. The Russian economy also had been pushed into a massive recession by a combination of Western sanctions and low oil prices. However, advanced Russian military equipment continues to appear in eastern Ukraine, and the separatist offensive now, with Russian backing once again, is able to push back the Ukrainian government forces. By February of 2015, the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany all managed to agree on a 12-point peace plan that involved like a ceasefire kind of thing, as well as the withdrawal of heavy weapons, the release of prisoners on both sides, and the removal of foreign troops from Ukrainian territory, i.e., Russia. And again, Ukrainian territory, big air quotes, because we still don't know if Donbass is considered an independent region or Ukraine, and that's kind of why people's opinions on this change. In May of 2015, the right sector neo-Nazi leader Yarash gets appointed as an advisor to the Ukrainian chief of staff, and he gets tasked specifically with, quote, bringing volunteer battalions under central command. So, like David was talking about, we've got all these wild, kind of Wild West, like paramilitary groups running around.
Who are all being funded by weird billionaires.
They're all getting funded by weird billionaires. They got fucking swastikas.
And Israeli rifles.
And, I mean, it's a wild fucking trip happening over there. And, you know, the new Western-backed leadership of Ukraine is like, this is a bad look. Hey, Yarash, these are your guys. You're a Nazi. They're Nazis. Collect your own. Rope up the Nazis. You make it look better, because this is a fucking mess.
Get them into the Ukrainian military.
Get them in proper uniforms that don't have fucking swastikas all over them.
Yeah.
Every news organization on the planet keeps posting pictures of them. It's making us look bad. And this is true. If you look at, you know, before 2020, basically, if you look at how any Western news organization was talking about Ukraine, all of them were like, what the fuck's up with the Nazis? And this kind of changed, you know, especially in 2022, but around 2020. So there was a real shift in how people talked about this, but this is not disputed. Everybody at this time knew this was happening. So these neo-Nazi elements in Ukraine, you know, the flip side of what we learned from this is that they're actually also entrenched in the government. Like, why is Yarash, why do they have a neo-Nazi leader go-to guy in the government to go collect his own, right? So despite Ukraine saying, well, it's only 2% of the population, that 2% of the population's got a lot of power. They've got a lot of political power.
It's like they might be like some kind of vanguard.
They're a Nazi vanguard party.
They're Nazi Leninists.
God, it's horrible. Not even, you know.
What's the like mythical thing like that like legitimately doesn't happen and everyone thinks it, but like is like the
horseshoe theory, how everyone thinks that.
No, it's the Red Brown Alliance.
Oh, God.
They're
trying to make it happen. Well, no, because they hate Russians.
No, yeah,
they think they're communists. Yeah.
Well,
so
no,
they're the vanguard.
Putin's a Jew.
They think Putin's a Jew. We got a Nazi vanguard. All right. So at the same time, right sector starts organizing a bunch of rallies to, quote, express distrust in the new government. Because they're like, what do you mean you're trying to clean us up?
Yeah.
Why don't we try to clean you up, new government? Because remember, their allegiance with the United States and these Western-backed powers had always just been strategic.
And this is why they had said, like, after this, we're going to Kiev.
Yes.
Right. Like, they were like, look, we're cleaning up the
Russian semi-Jew riffraff, the Jews and the communists. We're getting rid of them.
And then we're going to Kiev because we also
fucking hate that government too.
Yeah.
So they're like, we're going to do this to express distrust in the government. We're also going to say we want to end corruption and introduce martial law and to, quote, stop the persecution of members of volunteer battalions.
I guess this is what I was saying about the, like why is Gen Z all right-wing, where it's like, oh, okay, bourgeois democracy has failed them. And they're like, why not use force? Right, like this is like the logic of it, which is like, okay, we're just going to use force now.
Right, but why this force? Why Nazi force?
Because bourgeois democracy has failed them.
And they think these are the only options.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Poroshenko administration had promised transparency, and they were like, we're going to stamp out corruption. But it really hadn't done a very good job of that. It's only May of 2015, all right? But still, they had like a year, and it hasn't really happened. So when right sector's like, we're going to end corruption, I mean, they're not wrong about that part. Poroshenko then goes to former Georgian president Mikhail Saakashvili.
I asked you how to pronounce shit, not the other way around.
Anything. Okay. But he's a former Georgian president, and he's like, hey, will you come be governor of Odessa? But Saakashvili is like, I don't know. This seems like I'm getting some resistance from some elements of your government.
Also, I'm Georgian.
There's anti-corruption crusaders. There's weird politicians who are aligned with the country's oligarchs. Like, basically, he's like, dude, your shit's a mess. I don't think this is right for me. No. And the new right-wing pro-USA government embarks on a series of decommunization laws. Now, this is kind of what you had talked about, David. First of all, they ban the display of Soviet symbols. Okay, so if you're ethnically Russian living in Ukraine, you might be targeted by this. If you're like, well, yeah, I got like some hammer and sickle stuff laying around. Like my dad fought in the war. Like
Yeah,
what?
I've got bric-a-brac from when I
Correct.
like.
Yeah, if you're Ukrainian, remember, Ukraine had overwhelmingly supported the USSR more than most other countries in the USSR. 1991 referendum, when 70% of people in the USSR said we don't want to dissolve the USSR, we want to keep it, that number was 80% in Ukraine. When the leadership started to dissolve it anyway, it was Ukrainians who tried to assassinate the corrupt leaders to keep the USSR. Like, Ukrainians liked the USSR. So to pass this law being like, now you can't have any display of Soviet symbols, this is a problem. You know what else it was a problem for? Remember, they had built all of those statues honoring the Red Army from the USSR that had freed Ukraine from the Nazis during the Holocaust.
Or taken away their chocolate bars.
Taking away their chocolate bars. And it's a chocolate Poroshenko tie-in. So this is like a major issue. They also say that they are going to change the status of the May 9th holiday, which had previously marked the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. They're like, that's not a holiday anymore. And they're getting rid of all mentions of what the Soviets had called World War II. They called it the Great Patriotic War. They're like, nope, we're not talking about that anymore. And we are just calling it the Second World War. We're going to ban the Soviet victory flag from World War II. And we are going to rename streets, squares, and even whole cities that we think are too pro-Soviet. So at this time, 11 political parties get banned, including the largest opposition party that held 43 seats in parliament. Communist leaders throughout Ukraine start to get arrested. So if you're a leftist, if you're not sure what to think about this, it is not a left-wing position to back the far right-wing USA supported government employing neo-Nazis who is suddenly making it illegal to be a socialist in Ukraine. That is not a left-wing political position, no matter how many people try to convince you it is. Okay, this is not a left-wing government to support. The government also took control of the news outlets and imposed a centralized information policy that combined all national TV channels into, quote, a single information platform of strategic communication. And Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs starts working directly with an international network of PR firms to wage information warfare and start controlling the narrative. According to senior NATO officials, quote, they are really excellent in STRATCOM, strategic communication, media, info ops, and also PSYOPs. So this is why so many people end up with the little Ukrainian flags in their bios being like Slava Ukraine, right? Because they start crafting the narrative. And now I just want you to think, if this happened in Venezuela or Cuba or even Russia, wouldn't they call this leader a dictator?
It depends.
Oh, yeah? On what? On if he was U.S. backed or not?
Yeah. That's always
the thing, right? So all this stuff, though, outlining opposition parties, seizing control of the media, putting out one unified message that's like, this is the message, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. You know, it's what everything that communism is accused of doing all the time, right? So June 2015, right sector members raid and steal equipment from and then occupy the office of the Odessa branch of the Communist Party. So they're going hard on this anti-communist, anti-socialist thing. The following month in July, 20 members of the right sector shot a man in Mukachev and then attacked and destroyed 3 police cars and then blocked the Kiev-Chop highway in an operation that they claimed was to stop illicit trafficking in the area, but, you know, was really just like mayhem generally. The right sector also attacked a local police station with machine guns and grenades, and 3 people were killed and 13 people were wounded. Following the confrontation with police, the right sector then organized rallies all across Ukraine in multiple different places, including Lviv, Kiev, Mariupol, Odessa, all sorts of places, demanding that the persecution of patriots be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So they're terrorizing everybody in Ukraine now at this point and claiming that they are the ones who are actually being terrorized.
I mean, this is, I gotta say, like, if you are a right-wing guy.
Yes.
Okay, so if you know, like Nietzsche, right?
Yes, personally.
Bear with me.
Okay.
Okay, yes, personally. Like you, I mean, I guess you're probably more familiar with and have a better close relationship with his sister.
Who's his sister?
The weird neo-Nazi? Or like, well, the weird, no, not even neo, the weird old-timey Nazi
Really?
Who,
Original
like-
Nazi?
who like hung with Hitler and shit.
No, Nietzsche's sister?
Or something like that. He was like, or she was like,
Oh.
she kind of gave the Nietzsche stamp to
To Hitler.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you, big fan of hers, right? Yeah.
Not my thing, exactly. Not my thing, sorry.
But right, this is an aside, but if you are a Nietzsche kind of motherfucker, right, and you're like, wow, the Judeo-Christian slave morality is premised off of resentment or whatever kind of fucking bullshit, and it fools the Ubermensch into buying a narrative of supplication as a way of you understand the narrative I'm putting it,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that we need to have an aristocratic return to power. Like, this is the fucking thing. Why the fuck are all these motherfuckers so hell-bent on playing victim?
I mean,
This is-
it's true.
this
They're
is-
not strong.
This is the thing. It's like, if you're aristocratic, then be fucking like,
Yeah, then own it. Be like, yeah, we're fucking tough. Don't be like, oh my God, they're being so mean to us. They won't let us be Nazis. And it's true. They're totally throwing a fit and they're like, we are being persecuted. So the right sector also, meanwhile, starts erecting their own checkpoints on highways to prevent the army and police from sending reinforcements to different people who would be fighting against them, the neo-Nazis. And meanwhile, the Western media is like, this is starting to seem like an American coup, right? Like, Truth Out published an article specifically blaming Victoria Nuland with the tagline, Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland engineered Ukraine's regime change without weighing the likely consequences. They say in no uncertain terms, quote, Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs Victoria Nuland was the mastermind behind the February 22nd, 2014 regime change in Ukraine, plotting the overthrow of the democratically elected government of President Viktor Yanukovych, while convincing the ever-gullible U.S. mainstream media that the coup wasn't really a coup, but a victory for democracy. And this article's pretty wild. Truth Out, it's a pretty popular left-wing kind of website. I would say it's more liberal than communist for sure, but even they are going in on this. They go on to talk about the right sector issue, and included in this, they say, to sell this latest neocon-driven regime change to the American people, the ugliness of the coup makers had to be systematically airbrushed, particularly the key role of neo-Nazis and other ultra-nationalists from the right sector. For the U.S. organized propaganda campaign to work, the coup makers had to wear white hats, not brown shirts. So for nearly a year and a half, the West mainstream media, especially the New York Times and the Washington Post, twisted their reporting into all kinds of contortions to avoid telling their readers that the new regime in Kiev was permeated by and dependent on neo-Nazi fighters and Ukrainian ultra-nationalists who wanted a pure-blood Ukraine without ethnic Russians. And Truth Out basically presents this whole thing as ethnic cleansing with an American stamp of approval. The right sector ethno-nationalists inspired by Bandera wanted to build an independent Ukraine that is an ethno-state free of Russians. And this aligned with the profit motives of the United States and some zany Israeli billionaires.
and let's,
Some Ukrainian billionaires.
I am going to continue to push back. I think Ukraine has to claim Kolomoisky.
Okay.
Right? Like, I just, he was born in, Dnipro. He's one of their guys.
Okay. And Ukrainian Israeli billionaires.
Dual citizenship.
They're all like, we have the same interests at the end of the day as these neo-Nazis. Let's make it happen. So, August 2015, right sector members are among a group of people who get attacked in a rally in Kharkiv, organized by the opposition Bloc Party, a group affiliated with the administration of former President Yanukovych. And by the end of the year in December, Yarosh left right sector altogether to form a new movement called Yarosh's Statehood Initiative, which aims to, quote, unite many patriotic forces and restore order in Ukraine. Now, it's worth noting that also in 2015, the CIA, according to 5 former intelligence and national security officials, set up, quote, a secret intensive training program in the U.S. for elite Ukrainian special operations forces and other intelligence personnel. And the program was called Ground Department. and it was run by paramilitaries working for the CIA's ground branch. It was based at an undisclosed facility in southern USA that was established by the Obama administration, but would go on to be totally expanded under the Trump administration and the Biden administration alike. So by 2015, as part of this expanded anti-Russia effort, CIA ground branch paramilitaries started traveling to the front in eastern Ukraine to advise the paramilitary groups who were operating there. And U.S. Congress also this year passed a spending deal that featured hundreds of millions of dollars worth of economic and military support for Ukraine that specifically was modified to allow that support to flow to, as David mentioned, the neo-Nazi militia, the Azov Regiment. And that same year, the U.S. House of Representatives formally acknowledged that Azov was just a neo-Nazi org. So by 2015, it was documented that there were roughly 30 nationalist anti-Russian militias like Azov fighting against the separatists in eastern Ukraine.
And again, when they weren't mailing people's heads
To their mothers in boxes.
they were invading the offices of national gas companies
On behalf of a rich guy.
Yeah.
So 2016 runs around. Prime Minister Yatsenyuk narrowly survives a vote of no confidence in February, and he ends up resigning in April, which is wild. Because remember, he was trying to quit before. And they were like, no, we need you. But this is how wishy-washy and confused and all over the place this government is. Poroshenko quickly moves to install a new guy, Groisman, as his prime minister, who's like an ally. But he ends up getting dogged because revelations come to light that he had used offshore tax shelters during his tenure as president. A leak of documents from the Panama Papers shows a money laundering and tax evasion operation that's just massive going on with all these Ukrainian rich guys, and it implicated dozens of public figures and politicians from around the globe, but including in Ukraine. And Poroshenko denies any wrongdoing and is like, I fully complied with the law, but it does not look great, especially when he ran on an anti-corruption platform. So by 2016, also worth noting, meanwhile, over 40 monuments had been erected in Stepan Bandera's honor all throughout Ukraine.
Well, they got to put something on the pedestal once they knock down all the communist shit.
Right. There's no communist shit. We got the statue torn down. What do? We put up a Nazi. So most of these were, yes, of course, located in the West. And these had been, as David said, put in place of previously standing kind of Soviet statues, Lenin statues, right? They got rid of those. They got rid of the statues that were honoring the Red Army again. So they're really taking the whole anti-communists are Nazis things pretty literally here. You'll hear a lot of communists be like, anti-communism is literally just fascism. Anti-communism is literally just Nazi stuff. And they are like, it is, and we will prove it. We are removing the communists and replacing them with Nazis. They're being so fucking literal about this guy. They're just putting Bandera everywhere. And the Western-backed alt-right does not care at all. But some people in Europe are like, I'm sorry, these people want to be European? I don't know if they can be part of Europe if they're putting up Nazi statues. In Ukraine also, there was a group at this time called the Union of Left Forces of Ukraine for New Socialism, and they opposed what they were calling the NATO war against Russia, and they ended up facing a heavy persecution this year. And the leader was writing about their position as left-wing Ukrainians often and remarking that Ukraine, quote, the Ukraine that exists today, quote, seems to have been completely overrun with the same Nazis that we had previously been proud to defeat. He wrote, quote, the avenue of General Vatutin, who helped liberate Kiev from Nazism, which was discussed, at the very beginning of our episode, we kind of talked about this as well, was renamed to the avenue of Roman Shukevyuk, a Ukrainian fascist. At the time of the attack of Nazi Germany on the Soviet Union in June of 1941, Shukevyuk served as a member of the Nachtigol Battalion, a subdivision of the Abwehr, the military intelligence of the Wehrmacht, which consisted of Ukrainian Nazi collaborators. He also remarked that the street named after the Soviet military leader, Ukrainian Marshal Malinovsky, one of the leaders of the Red Army during the war against Nazism, was renamed the Street of the Heroes of the Azov Battalion.
That's so
wild, absolutely wild. So, and this is from, leftists in Ukraine. So when we say not every Ukrainian was stoked on this, especially not if you were a socialist, right? This guy had a socialist party and he's like, they're destroying monuments to socialism. They're destroying monuments to the defeat of the Holocaust, and they were building statues of Nazis in their place. This is a wackadoo situation going on. And also, this year, Natalie Jaresko, remember the chick from the State Department?
Uh-huh.
She resigns from her position, and she ends up taking over Ukraine's largest telecom company.
Sick.
So it's just money, business, government, USA, handshake, handshake. So in 2018 now, we're skipping ahead, 2017, a remarkably unremarkable year.
Wait, you're saying nothing happened in 2017?
Well, nothing particularly that's moving us.
We gotta keep it moving. Like
We're moving along.
we have. I'm going to say, we've covered Ukraine more than basically anything we've done since I joined this thing.
But the reason is that usually when we talk about other issues, they overlap a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This one's kind of an island. It's like usually you can be like, Air America. We've done a whole episode on Air America. They show up. This one isn't really stuff we've talked about as much.
So I will say, right, like I forgot to mention also Raytheon has been sending a shit ton of stuff over Ukraine. Like, and that's been winding up in the hands of Azov stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what's it? Anduril, which is the more like information tech stuff, has been supplying Azov Brigade people with like a bunch of information shit. Just to throw it out.
All of the bad characters showing.
Yeah.
So, 2018, January 28th, 600 members of the National Militia, which is a newly formed ultranationalist group that vows to, quote, use force to establish order, put on balaclavas and storm a city council meeting in the central Ukrainian town of Cherkasy. So it's just been chaos, right? Nobody can figure out how to control what's going on in Ukraine. And many of the National Militia's members actually came from the Azov movement. Now, a U.S. State Department report at this time found that Azov, quote, attacked and destroyed a Romani camp in Kiev after its residents failed to respond to their ultimatum to leave the area in 24 hours in full view of the local police.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you're telling me we got to go back to this balaclava shit?
Yeah, uh-huh.
So, are you sure that it was not Pussy Riot?
I've got my own feelings about Pussy Riot, okay?
No.
But I don't think they are part of the National Militia whose members come from the Azov movement.
I'm just saying.
I don't
Did they dance?
That's them. We don't have any reports of dancing. Like I said, I got my own feelings. But
Were they topless? They were probably topless.
they might have been topless.
Yeah.
So around this time also, Reuters reports that, quote, Ukraine has experienced a wave of unchecked vigilantism. Institute Republica, a local pro-democracy NGO, American NGO, reported that activists are frequently harassed by vigilantes when holding legal meetings or rallies related to politically controversial positions such as the promotion of LGBT rights or opposition to the war. Azov and other militias have attacked anti-fascist demonstrations, city council meetings, media outlets, art exhibitions, foreign students, and Roma. Progressive activists describe a new climate of fear that they say has been intensifying ever since last year's near-fatal stabbing of anti-war activist Stas Seryenko, which is believed to have been perpetrated by an extremist group named C14. The name refers to a 14-word slogan popular among white supremacists. Brutal attacks this month on International Women's Day marches in several Ukrainian cities prompted an unusually forceful statement from Amnesty International, which warned that, quote, the Ukrainian state is rapidly losing its monopoly on violence. Very anarchistic statement of them.
I mean, that's what's the Schmidt thing?
Which Schmidt thing?
The Schmidt thing, like the
The monopoly on violence? Or what?
the state of exception shit.
Oh, okay.
Right, like the state like decides the exception.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so in case there was any question about it, these again, the Nazis are in fact far-right extremists. They hate women, they hate gay people, they hate the Roma, and they do not respect the police, they do not respect the authority, and they're like, look at me, I'm in control of the ship now. That's what they're basically saying to every elected leader of Kiev. They're like, you think you're in charge, you're not in charge, we're in charge.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I just want to say, right, like we are in a calm within a storm.
Kind
moment.
of a calm within a storm, yeah.
But like, right, I have to imagine that if you are the sort of like Ukrainian power structure at the time, like the, let's call it mainstream type motherfucking power structure,
yeah.
Right? And the only people who are fighting Russia, or who are like the people who are the most intense about wanting to fight Russia, are the Nazis, then they do not have to be a demographically significant portion for you to be like, fuck, we do kind of need the Nazis.
We need them. We need the Nazis to help us fight Russia. That is literally what the power structure is thinking, exactly. So Reuters also went on to say, quote, Kiev's recent efforts to incorporate independent armed groups, aka neo-Nazi militias, into its regular armed forces, as well as a continuing national sense of indebtedness to the militias for the defense of the homeland, make addressing the ultranationalist threat considerably more complicated than it is elsewhere. According to Schaff and the Institute Republica, Ukrainian extremists are rarely punished for acts of violence. In some cases, such as C-14's January attack on a remembrance gathering for 2 murdered journalists, police actually detained peaceful demonstrators instead. So the lines are getting really blurred, and it does kind of feel like these Nazis are holding all of Ukraine hostage, even the USA-backed government there. The USA officially this year also prohibited the sale of weapons to Azov. They passed a spending package called the Above Brigade, and they called them the Azov Brigade, sorry, an ultra-nationalist outfit full of neo-Nazis, and they're like, we can't keep sending them any
And this is the
guns.
one that Ro Khanna was like.
Yes, Ro Khanna said this. She was like, these are not acceptable. We cannot do this.
I think Ro Khanna might be a dude.
Ro Khanna, oh, really?
Pretty.
I'm like, this bitch right here. From California, also.
I'm just.
This is what I get for only reading things. Ro Khanna's a dude. Look at him.
Yeah.
Where is he from? Congressional District 17. This is not our part of California. Where is District 17? I gotta know. Images. We're looking at a map. Map. 17th District map. Where do you think it is?
Bay Area.
Bay Area. That's real far from us. To my credit, Milpitas, I've never even been to Milpitas. I don't even know what happens in Milpitas. There's like another country. Have you been to Milpitas?
No, I did once spend a bizarrely eventful evening at a biker bar in Martinez.
Oh, okay. That feels right for you somehow.
They were fabulously kind to me. I will say, I'm sure if you live in I'm sure there's like one biker bar in Martinez, so they like,
you know, the one.
But they were fabulously kind to me, and did have to deposit me back at the Amtrak station.
Because you were too intoxicated?
Well, because they just kept buying me drinks.
Okay, well, maybe this is the land of Ro Khanna, who is definitely a man, and I did not misgender him.
Yeah.
But he does have a very fun...
Yeah.
He's got a good name. It's a good name. I like the
I mean,
name.
he's a Democrat. He's not going to be cool.
He's not going to be cool, man.
But, like...
Yeah. But, you know, okay, so California guy, he's like, oh, yay, I hate Nazis. Good.
No.
Bare minimum from the Democrats. We'll give them the weapons, but not to the Nazi ones. Okay, sure, have fun.
But by this point, I will say, like, we have long passed the point where the Azov Brigade and the Aidar Battalion and like the Dnipro Battalion have been incorporated into the Ukrainian military, which means that fundamentally, if you are giving weapons to the Ukrainian military,
they're getting into Nazi hands,
including the Israeli rifles.
Yes.
Right. There's no way to prevent it.
It's all, and this is what the Democrats do. It's all lip service. It's all symbolic. It's like you didn't actually fucking do anything. So Poroshenko's public approval rating, meanwhile, is sagging into the single digits as they approach a 2019 presidential election. Poroshenko's re-election campaign slogan is also really sketchy. It's Army, Language, Faith.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's super right.
Army, language, faith. This in a country where, if I understand correctly, something like 80% as at least one of their languages speaks Russian.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, most people speak Russian.
Maybe not their primary language.
Primary one, but
right, like there are, you know, that seems weird.
Right. And also Army, Faith, it's like this guy is as right wing as they
What, does he not want to fuck with the Ukrainian Navy?
Well, yeah, he hates the Navy. Do they have a Navy? They're landlocked. How much Navy they got there? No, they're not landlocked. They have war going on in the South.
The
North.
I love that, like...
My geography is real bad.
No, but, right, like,
my geography
this
is horrible.
Madeline, I just have to point this out. This whole fucking thing is over the
It's over the port. It's got the port.
Which is a giant fucking peninsula.
Yes, I know. It's got the port.
Black Sea.
We talked about the port. I know. Like, look, there it is. And Russia likes the port. I know. I get.
What do you think? It's a peninsula into a valley?
Well, you know, I knew there was the port. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know how substantial the Black Sea truly is.
The Black Sea is like a major trading conduit.
Right. Is it like
It's really big.
Is it as big as Texas?
I don't.
I need a
Probably.
comparative analysis of the size of the Black Sea. Geography, not my strong suit. You guys, if you ever hear me say anything about geography, do not trust it. Okay? That's not right. Okay, Texas 268,000 square miles. The Black Sea is 168,000.
And this
So
is
they have a sea slightly smaller than Texas.
that
It's the
is
size of Texas.
economically massively significant.
It's massively significant. That's why the whole thing about the port in Crimea was important.
Mhm.
Okay? Yes. All right.
Just throwing those out.
Rokan.
I'm sorry. I know that I'm always the person to get us off track, but
Okay.
Ukraine is landlocked. It's
Well,
that was
it's not. It's not on like the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean. You know what I mean? It's not on an ocean. It's not on an ocean. It's on a sea. A sea is different than an ocean.
this is. I mean, I agree with you there. Thank you for telling.
I just don't think the Navy is of particular importance to their military.
Granting that the like hugely significant trade routes
Okay,
that
let's
run.
see. Let's see. What percent of Ukrainian military is Navy?
This started with a fucking throwaway joke that could have lasted 2 seconds.
Oh, interesting. Let's see. We're not gonna look at the.
It's not a lie. I'm sure it's.
Let's see. Ukraine's naval capabilities were virtually non-existent.
Well-
The country. Oh, wait though. This goes for you. The country lost most of its fleet when Russia occupied Crimea. Ukraine's only major warship was scuttled in February 2022 to prevent it from falling into Russian hands.
And this is why Poroshenko doesn't like the Navy.
Okay, so there's no Navy. So he's not talking about the fucking Navy. All right. When he
This was
said-
a fucking throwaway joke
Well,
that could
you
have
know-
been 2 seconds.
Okay, I forgot about the Black Sea. All right, that's on me. So when he says army, language, and faith, he means that.
Yes.
He means army. Now, he wants to create an independent Ukrainian Orthodox church. That's why he's talking about faith. And it's worth noting that, you know, as David mentioned, a lot of Ukrainians speak Russian. A third of them speak Russian as their first language.
Mhm.
So when he says language, he means forcing all those people to speak Ukrainian instead. And Ukraine also appealed to the UN and the General Assembly, and they voted in favor of a resolution that called on Russia to withdraw its forces from Crimea and end its occupation of Ukrainian territory. You know, this helped Poroshenko's popularity a little, but it still wasn't great. And the presidential election was kind of a replay of 2014 in a lot of ways, because we had Poroshenko running and we had Tymoshenko running as well. But the candidacy of television personality and political novice,
Who was.
Zelensky, changed things.
He was. I'm assuming you're going to describe his comedy career.
Well, we're going to talk about it a little. You can
Okay.
editorialize in there, though. This
Yeah, I
is
mean,
definitely going to be a
he
four-parter.
He played a fake president.
He played a fake president.
on like a sort of. I feel like it was like a John Oliver type situation.
It was like a sitcom.
Or like it's like a Veep.
It was kind of like Daily Show-ish. Yeah, people
Yeah, like-
described it as being like that.
Yeah.
So Zelensky was an actor, yes, who had portrayed the president of Ukraine in a popular sitcom, and he ended up leveraging his massive online following into a serious campaign for president standing against official corruption. And his campaign was heavily funded, yes, by the Israeli-Ukrainian billionaire oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky. See, got practice saying it.
Yeah.
And Kolomoisky was part owner of the TV station that ran Zelensky's TV show, which actually led some people to wonder, like, was Zelensky just like this rich guy's prop all along? Like, did he set up the TV show because he was like, I'm going to craft this image for this guy? Like, how much chess was he playing here versus checkers? Was the TV show actually an extended advertisement for a future campaign that Kolomoisky knew was going to come?
And remember that it's around this time that the Kolomoisky's sort of position within like the Ukrainian hierarchy is under threat because of the IMF loan and subsequent investigation. So he is trying to like fucking
Get power somehow.
get power.
He needs power somehow. Exactly. So his media outlet also provided security and logistical backup for the entire Zelensky political campaign, during which times he traveled to Geneva and Tel Aviv 14 different occasions where Kolomoisky was based. Now, the Panama Papers revealed complex financial ties between Kolomoisky and Zelensky as well. And if that weren't enough, Kolomoisky is one of the major funders of Azov Battalion and Aidar Battalion, as we talked about. And Zelensky himself is a pretty far-right guy. Zelensky claimed in an interview once, quote, "There are indisputable heroes. Stepan Bandera is a hero for a certain part of Ukrainians, and this is a normal and cool thing.
Okay.
He was one of those who defended the freedom of Ukraine." There's a quote from Zelensky.
First of all, he's like our generation, right?
He's totally a millennial.
He's a fucking, because it's a normal and cool thing.
He's like, it is so normal and cool to love a Nazi. We all love a Nazi. We love this Nazi.
But
It's so normal and cool.
I love that he starts by hedging, where
Yeah.
he's like, listen, for some Ukrainians who I aim to represent, he's doing I plan on representing all Ukraine.
Right, it's kind of a Mamdani thing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
No,
Mamdani said the thing
no,
with
no.
a Zionist. Come on.
I'm just...
Okay, so Zelensky also publicly defended Ukrainian footballer Roman Zolzulia as a, quote, true patriot when he was accused of being a Nazi due to photos taken with the Azov Battalion. I don't know, actually. So this is how it's worded. He had photos of Bandera that he was, like, using a lot, and he also had open support of the Azov Battalion. I don't think there's actually photos of him with the Azov Battalion. I think it was just worded kind of complicated. But Zelensky's former prime minister, Oleksiy Honcharak, also appeared on stage at a neo-Nazi concert organized by C14, that super fascist white supremacist group. So Zelensky, there's no kind of way around this. He is a far-right guy. He is a right-wing extremist guy. Despite how the U.S. media tries to paint him as like a freedom fighter for liberal values.
Yeah.
The guy's a fucking Nazi, okay? He's a Nazi sympathizer at the very least. So in 2019, Zelensky wins. He's elected president. And he takes office on May 20th, and he uses his inauguration speech to announce the dissolution of parliament and the triggering of snap legislative elections. And these elections, held on July 21st, delivered an absolute parliamentary majority to Zelensky's party, which is called the Servant of the People. Meanwhile, U.S. Congress approves $400 million in military aid for Ukraine, and President Donald Trump put the funds on hold and is like, no, I got to do a phone call with Zelensky first, because this guy is a messy fucking bitch who loves Trump. So on July 25th, 2019, Trump gets on a call and urges Zelensky to investigate the son of a political opponent, Democratic U.S. presidential candidate Joe Biden, who had served on the board of one of Ukraine's largest natural gas.
And Hunter
Hunter
Biden
Uh-huh.
of the... Have you seen the pictures?
Is it the feet pictures?
No,
The naked pictures?
yeah.
I haven't seen them, but I know of them.
He's a very confident man.
He's a very confident man. That is true. So, over a month later, the military aid gets released, but by that point, U.S. congressional Democrats were already investigating Trump's alleged attempt to kind of pressure and control Ukraine in maybe an illegal way. And that investigation actually eventually served as the basis for an impeachment inquiry against Trump that was later launched on September 24th of that year. Trump got acquitted by Senate in a party-line vote, and he responded by purging senior U.S. government national security officials because he was like, you guys are not loyal. So, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who was the top Ukraine expert on the National Security Council, gets fired. And the post of U.S. ambassador to Ukraine remains vacant until the end of Trump's term and then beyond as well. Campaign promises were made to pursue a peace policy with Russia, right? And Zelensky's opponents characterize this as capitulation to Russia. And they're like, all this is going to do is legitimize Russian aggression in Donbass, in Crimea. But people were really tired of the war. So Zelensky was like, I'm going to be the peace guy. I'm going to be the peace president. And peace is good for business, which makes sense why his billionaire backer handler might want that. But unfortunately, Azov was basically like, we make the rules. And we say no.
No, and they're not a demographically significant portion of Ukrainians, but they're a demographically significant portion of armed Ukrainians.
They are, and they are calling the shots. So, on October 26th, this kind of comes to a head, and Zelensky gets into a fight with Beletsky. And this all happens over this town called Zolotai, and it gets filmed. So 14,000 people live in this town. It's 700 kilometers southeast of Kiev. And the Kiev Post actually wrote about this and said it's cut in two by the front line of Russia's war against Ukraine. And some parts of Zolote, the military positions of Ukrainian and Russian-led troops are less than 100 meters apart. So the day before this fight between Zelensky and Beletsky emerges, Zelensky shows up for a surprise overnight visit there in this town. And he meets with soldiers and veterans and civilians in the town. And the veterans had taken up residence in an abandoned house. And, Zelensky shows up and right away he starts fighting with the guys, with the soldiers. And the first disagreement was about what the residents of Zolote wanted. Zelensky was like, well, the locals here want disengagement. They want peace. And he wants, to say that a larger distance between the two sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, would actually decrease the number of soldiers being killed there each month and actually make it a little more tenable of a situation. But the veterans are like, troop withdrawal is basically giving up. You're basically waving a white flag and it's actually going to make us look really bad and weak, and the locals don't want that. Now, for the record, according to most reports, the locals were actually super divided on this issue, so they were just kind of politicizing a complicated case. So someone then informed Zelensky that veterans that he was talking to had illegal weapons stored under their beds. And Zelensky was like, you guys have illegal weapons here. You have to get rid of them. You have to remove them. And one of the guys, Denis Yantar, was the head of the National Corps, which is a political offshoot of the far-right Azov battalion, right? And he is like, we don't have arms. And he's like, instead, what we should do? We should talk about protests against the planned disengagement that had taken place across Ukraine. And Zelensky is like, you're lying to me. So Zelensky says this, quote, listen, Denis, I'm the president of this country. I'm 41 years old. I'm not a loser. I came to you and told you, remove the weapons. Don't shift the conversation to some protests. And this all gets filmed and posted on social media. The language is funny, though. I'm not a loser.
I do like that Zelensky is trying to govern like middle of the road, like milquetoast motherfucker, and it's just like getting yanked hither and yon by like the far right.
Yeah, I mean, you really are seeing the far right is
right.
Here.
Like my understanding, and like he seems like kind of like, let's call it center right motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right. Is that it's like he kind of did need like the scary nationalists if he was going to win or govern at all.
Yeah.
Right. Like that would be my best character.
Or to be a communist.
Presumably. Well, that's not
gonna happen.
That was not going to happen. And he would have lost in a more visceral get shot kind of way. Maybe.
Probably, yeah. So Beletsky then responds by threatening Zelensky and is like, look, if you take any of our troops out of any area of Ukraine, I'm personally going to send thousands more men to take their place. So every time you clear troops out of here, I'm going to send in more. And it's just going to keep getting worse. And he does this, where he threatens Zelensky in this way, in public on his YouTube channel.
That rocks.
Oh, yeah, this is like the dystopia is now, baby.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day, meanwhile, National Police Deputy Chief Vadim Troyan, who was previously Beletsky's deputy in Azov, reports, okay, fine, the veterans removed their weapons. So then this singer, Sofia Fedina, who's also a lawmaker with the European Solidarity Party, because Ukraine is not a real place.
Madeline,
that's the same European Solidarity Party, meanwhile, that Poroshenko had been in, right, with 27 seats in parliament.
But you are highlighting the ridiculousness of like a pop singer being also a member of like a pro-European type motherfucker.
Yeah, this is deeply unserious behavior. This is like U.S. Israeli shit.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, which is like we have we're
deeply unserious.
Marjorie fucking Taylor Greene and
was she a singer?
No, but
she is a joke.
She's a kook.
She's a kook. She's like our Timoshenko.
Yeah.
Kook balls. I'm guessing Sofia Fedina is like our Donald Trump. Our Reagan.
Sure.
Maybe. So she basically says. What she says, she goes, oh, this president thinks he's immortal. It would be a shame if a grenade went off when someone wearing a white or blue shirt happened to be visiting. So this is a dig at Zelensky because he went to visit wearing plain clothes. He wasn't wearing army fatigues. So then Ruslan Stefanchuk, deputy speaker of parliament from Zelensky's party, calls on Ukrainian police and is like, go investigate singer lawmaker Fedina for threatening the president.
to be fair, she did threaten the
She
president.
definitely did. She definitely was like, I'm gonna grenade him. Get him over here. I'm throwing a grenade at him. Like, this shit is going wild. So 2020, COVID happens. Oh my God. Like, they need one more thing, right? Massive disruptions of daily life in Ukraine. The Ukrainian economy takes an even sharper hit from lockdowns, the closure of non-essential businesses. And the situation gets especially dire in Donbass, right? Infrastructure is totally damaged. There's serious disruptions of the water supply. And local parties are dominating mayoral races. But national parties, including Zelensky's Servant of the People Party, are struggling. Poor showings in local elections also reflected an overall decline in Zelensky's public approval. There was little progress on the populist reform agenda that he had kind of run on, and the conflict in the Donbass remained unsettled, like a year later. And then a UN resolution comes to pass wanting to, quote, combat glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. And the resolution passes 130 to 2. But David, can you guess which two countries were the ones that voted against it?
Is it Israel and the U.S.?
It's the United States and Ukraine.
Oh.
Because
okay.
Ukraine is their whole thing's Nazis.
Yeah.
Their whole thing's Nazi glorification. So 2021 is kind of the year that I say could have stopped it all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this time, Biden's administration in the United States is assembling a task force to determine how the CIA and other U.S. agencies could support a Ukrainian insurgency should Russia launch a large-scale invasion of some kind. And one former intelligence officer said at this time, if the Russians invade, those graduates of the CIA programs are going to be your militia, your insurgent leaders. We've been training these guys now for 8 years. They're really good fighters. That's where the agency's program could have serious impact. And over the years, the CIA training programs they found had been, quote, very effective, according to former CIA executives. So the CIA, we know, has definitely been involved in a really direct way in this since 2015. They're ramping up their presence there, and they're like, look, we know Russia's probably going to invade, and we got our guys. We trained our guys, we armed our guys, we prepped our guys. Our guys happen to be neo-Nazis, but we know they're going to handle the. And this year, the Biden administration allocates nearly $6 million in National Endowment for Democracy spending in Ukraine, which was a huge jump from the roughly $4 million per year that Trump had been spending. And this is specifically supposed to go for monitoring the media and, quote, independent coverage of the situation in Donbass, as well as elections. So basically, they're investing money in trying to spin the narrative, control the narrative, and buy politicians. And Al Akbar wrote about this, and they reported, quote, NED's data reveals a consistent U.S. effort to counter the Russian narrative on Donbass by funding media outlets, activists, and civil society figures whose primary focus was to oppose Russia and cultivate hostility towards Moscow. Out of the $22.4 million spent between 2017 and 2021, more than $2.9 million went to the Center for International Private Enterprise, CIPE, a group that openly champions free market capitalism and global trade. One of CIPE's grants, worth $500,000, aimed to, quote, develop Ukraine's market economy by enhancing the role of business associations and promoting collaboration between the private sector and policymakers. In short, the goal was to shift economic policymaking into the hands of major corporations, thus undermining state sovereignty. So, between October and November of 2021, Russia begins a massive buildup of troops and military equipment along the border with Ukraine. And Putin at this point making some demands, and they all are hinging on NATO. So, this is where that whole NATO thing comes in. Now, it's important to note, Putin does not pursue annexing the Donbass region up to this point. And foreign policy analysts think this is important, it's significant. One explains, quote, Putin's primary reason for invading Ukraine was not because he covets territory and hopes to rebuild Moscow's lost empire. If that were his motivation, he could have annexed the Donbass region along with Crimea in 2014, when Ukraine was far less militarily capable. But he refused to do so for 8 more years, despite stiff criticism from Russian nationalists and the Donbass separatists, because he believed keeping Donetsk and Luhansk inside Ukraine would ensure there was reliable domestic opposition to joining NATO. Rather, Putin's primary motivation was invading was his belief that the United States and NATO were steadily deepening their security involvement inside an increasingly anti-Russian Ukraine, actions that the West thought would deter rather than provoke Russian aggression, and turning the country into what Russia regarded as an unsinkable aircraft carrier, a base for Western military and intelligence operations against Moscow. The source on this analysis is Responsible Statecraft. And Responsible Statecraft, I have to say, this is not a pro-Russia propaganda group as the United States wants anybody to believe if they're talking about NATO involvement in Russia, right? This is a think tank funded by the Koch brothers, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and the Carnegie Corporation. So their foreign policy reporting, I always think is kind of interesting because it usually favors the Kissinger brand of realpolitik that says, let's not rock the boat too much, it's bad for business. So this is kind of the position of these types of analysts. And these are not pro-Russia guys. These are pro-USA guys. They are pro-capitalist guys. But their critique of this whole situation with the United States is basically that the USA is being kind of petty with this whole NATO thing because it could ultimately backfire and be really bad for business. So, Putin wants really veto power over NATO expansion and the containment of NATO forces to countries that had already been members previous to 1997. And this would basically remove the NATO security umbrella from Eastern and Southern Europe, as well as the Baltic states.
It's worth. Can we go back?
Yeah.
Can we just like as an aside about NATO?
Yes.
Right. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, sometimes the OTAN.
Yes.
Right. Is a Cold War relic that was premised on countering the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Which, unless I've had a stroke, has not existed since 1991.
Exactly.
Am I wrong?
You are correct.
Right.
It is ridiculous. So when Putin is like, I don't think we should be adding more people to NATO, this is kind of messed up. Everybody else, though, in NATO, and, it's like, absolutely not. Like, you don't get a say in that. And NATO has always been an ongoing issue. Like, one political analyst, Stephen Cohen, says, look at it through Moscow's eyes. Since the Clinton administration in the 1990s, the U.S.-led West has been on a steady march towards post-Soviet Russia. It began with the expansion of NATO in the 1990s under Clinton. Bush then further expanded NATO all the way to Russia's borders. Then came the funding of what are euphemistically called NGOs, but they were political action groups funded by the West operating inside Russia. Then came the decision to build missile defense installations along Russia's borders, allegedly against Iran, a country which has neither nuclear weapons nor any missiles to deliver them. Then comes American military outpost in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, which led to the War of 2008. And now the West is at the gates of Ukraine. So that's the picture as Moscow sees it. And it's rational. It's reasonable. It's hard to deny. Now, that same year, Dmitry Yarosh, right, the former leader of Right Sector, avowed follower of neo-Nazi, original Nazi, I guess, Bandera and the neo-Nazis who followed him, declares that he has been appointed as an advisor to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. And soon after that, Zelensky ends up decorating Right Sector Commander Dmytro Kotsibailo with the distinction of Hero of Ukraine. And again, Right Sector Nazis. So just as a final nail in the coffin, this year, Ukraine was the only country, along with the United States, again, who voted against that UN Assembly draft resolution about combating Nazism.
Great.
So this is the situation in 2021, the year before Russia finally invades. And this will be where we end this episode. But I just want to take a second to really say, anybody who tells you this conflict started with Russia invading Ukraine out of nowhere, we've had 3 episodes about how the lead up to this point. This is not out of nowhere. Right?
Yeah.
This is multiple years, multiple different styles of provocation.
Who is saying,
a lot of people.
That seems, I don't know, since I'm going to say since I was in my 20s, so a long fucking time ago, we have been hearing about Ukraine popping off, right?
Yes.
And that seems to me, it's just anyone who's whoa, this Ukraine place is going crazy all of a sudden. Why did Russia did they wake up out of a coma?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess. But no, I think people just really don't pay attention. And remember, we invested a lot of money in controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
So people really do think this, whatever the case. I think, this is a long episode. Next week, we'll start in 2022 with the invasion, and we'll also talk about the proposed peace deal, and maybe we'll have some news on the peace deal by the time we record. So that'll be interesting.
That sounds fun.
It's a long episode, but, thanks for sticking around. And if you guys like what we do, you can support us over on Patreon. It's $3 a month, and you'll get bonus content over there. And if $3 a month is too much for you right now, we are just happy you are here.